old union has come in here to dwell.
The largest union talk radio program in the South. This is the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison. My co-host is Adam Keller. You can give us a call. The phone number is 844-899-TVLR. That is 844-899-8857. We don't have anybody lined up for the first 30 minutes here, so would love to hear from you. In particular, if we've got anybody that's tuning in or listening from the State Democratic Executive Committee meeting in Alabama, down in Montgomery, would love to get a report. I know that's going to be an interesting day. So 844-899-TVLR. That is 844-899-8857. You can also text that number if you don't have time or you're not able to call in. You can text that number, or you can send us a written note at tvlr.fm/contact, and we might respond to it on the next program. You know, speaking of electoral politics, there was multiple labor organizations released their endorsements last week. Adam, one of those was the Labor Council, the North Alabama Area Labor Council in North Alabama, centering around Huntsville. Talk to us about that, those endorsements and the city council races.
Yeah, so the city of Huntsville has a really big election coming up August 25th. That is a Tuesday. There are 3 city council districts that are impacted, District 2, 3, and 4. District 1 and District 5 are not up for election this cycle, but 2, 3, and 4 are, and that also includes the Board of Education seats for those districts as well. Though I will note that in Board of Education District 4, Ryan Renaud was unopposed, so he has already been declared the winner. So you will not be voting for school board in that district. But, you know, there are a couple of candidates for District 2. That is Thomas Kazez and David Little, who is the incumbent. City Council District 3, which is South Huntsville, has 3 candidates. The incumbent, Jenny Robinson, who is being challenged by John Stewart and Liliana Pinder. City Council District 4, the incumbent is Bill Kling. He is being challenged by Nick Freevold and Will Pilot. On the school board, you have District 2 incumbent Holly McCarty is being challenged by Matt Woolsey. District 3, Andrea Alvarez is not running for another term, so it will be a new school board member in South Huntsville for District 3. Peyton Redfern is running against Robert Coach P. Person. So those are the candidates. And as you mentioned, Jacob, the North Alabama Area Labor Council did make some endorsements, announced those this past week. This followed a screening process. Candidates were given questionnaires. Candidates were given opportunity to engage with the Labor Council. The Labor Council actually partnered with the local building trades to hold a candidate lunch and learn. As we've discussed on the show, the Labor Council did formally adopt a workers' agenda for North Alabama. And so that sort of drove the process, and the delegates were able to dissect the answers to the questionnaire and really figure out where these candidates stand when it comes to issues relevant to working people. Those of you who are in Alabama, or, you know, many of you in the South are familiar with the concept of preemption, right? Where city governments in Alabama and many other southern states do not have home rule. So a lot of policies and potential policies that a city would want to pass, they cannot do in Alabama. They're pretty limited in some of their authority and leverage there. So the workers' agenda for the North Alabama Area Labor Council was really trying to look at what could we do within the boundaries of our constrained system. You know, what could we do at the local level to have a more pro-worker government? And so the Labor Council did make a couple endorsements. That includes Liliana Pinder for District 3 City Council, as well as Thomas Kazez for District 2 City Council. And you can find this press release and more information about that at northalabamalabor.org. Just for some other information regarding this election, you know, these city elections that happen in August are very, very low turnout. We are talking, single digit potentially, 10-12% turnout maybe. And so it's really, really important that working people show up and participate, have our voices heard. It's an opportunity for union activists and community advocates to really have an outsized influence. I have seen that play out throughout Huntsville's politics. I've been, engaged in Huntsville politics for 10, 15 years now, and I have seen multiple times where the grassroots can upset the establishment. It happened in 2016. I remember we had 2 school board seats up for election, District 1, District 5 at the time. And basically the entire city's establishment was behind a couple of candidates. So we're talking the Huntsville Committee of 100, which is a very influential business organization. We are talking political consultants like the Driscoll Group, which often, runs these kind of campaigns for the establishment candidates in Huntsville area. And I know in 2016, the grassroots coalitions were able to upset the establishment and elect Michelle Watkins and Pam Hill to the school board. It was really a big shock in the city. I've seen it play out since then. I think whatever you make of Frances Akridge and her term on the city council, she certainly ran as a more progressive grassroots kind of candidate and did upset the establishment. The C100 Driscoll Group backed candidate at the time. And so we've seen that play out. Even Andrea Alvarez was, a mom, just an involved mom who wanted to run for school board. And was able to face off against, an establishment-backed incumbent, as well as a right-wing Monster Liberty type crank. And she was able to win, and serve a term on the school board. So all that to say, there's a lot of opportunity for folks who want to push for a more responsive, a more progressive, a more pro-worker government in the city of Huntsville. There is a big opportunity. August 10th is the last day to update your voter registration in time for this election. So if you live in the city of Huntsville, make sure you check your voter registration status this weekend. Do it today if you're listening, right? Go ahead, find out where your polling place is. Make sure your voting status is active. We have had issues throughout Alabama where folks are mistakenly, perhaps not mistakenly, deactivated or find some kind of issue with their voter registration status. So it's always important to make sure that you are active, you know where to vote. And again, that's Tuesday, August 25th is the election date. If there is a runoff, it would be September 22nd. And considering there are 3 candidates in a couple of districts, that's certainly possible. And I will note that a runoff election for a city council or school board race is going to have even lower turnout. So when union members get involved, when we talk to our members, our rank and file, when we talk to the families and, neighbors and spouses and other coworkers, we can really have an impact. And so I want to just put that out there for folks. Again, go to northalabamalabor.org. United Women of Color has put out a really helpful voting guide if you want to check that out. And, if you look at campaign finance reports so far from the city council, it's pretty clear in South Huntsville that the incumbent Jenny Robinson has some powerful backers, right? And so it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. But again, Liliana Pinder and Thomas Cassez were endorsed by the local labor movement for those city council races on August 25th. I know that I personally worked with Liliana years ago. She comes out of the education world. She was a teacher here in Huntsville back when I worked for AEA, and I represented the educators in Huntsville City Schools. And I was really proud to get to know her then as a young, non-tenured teacher. She was willing to speak up and advocate I remember being at a school board meeting and the news was there, and there weren't many educators who were willing to stand beside me in front of the camera, and even fewer willing to speak to the news. And I remember her being brave enough to do that. And that spoke volumes to me. So it's been really, I'm very proud to see folks who are willing to step into the arena and advocate for the community. So whatever your feelings on this election, I would just encourage you to make sure you do your research, check out some of the resources available. There are still several candidate forums and debates that are scheduled throughout the city over the next few weeks. So there are opportunities to engage. Check out the United Women of Color voting guide. And again, go to northalabamalabor.org. You can learn more about why the Labor Council made its endorsements and why the Labor Council is hoping to mobilize volunteers to impact this election. So if you're a union member who lives in the area, even if you're not in Huntsville proper, but you're interested in maybe doing some phone banking or door knocking for the Labor Council, again, check out northalabamalabor.org. You can find the Labor Council on Facebook as well, and check that out. Make sure you're on the Labor Council's list to stay engaged. And it's going to be exciting to see how it plays out over the next few weeks. But then, of course, we'll be switching gears to November, right? So,
yeah, speaking of November, the Alabama AFL-CIO had their political convention last week and endorsed candidates in the statewide constitutional office races, the Supreme Court, the Board of Education, and the state legislative races, right?
Yeah, that's right. And, a couple of things to note from that. Not a lot of surprises. I think if you go to the Alabama AFL-CIO's Facebook page, they did list the full list there. Mostly Democrats received endorsements. There were a few no endorsements in certain seats. There were a few Republicans who received endorsements. None for statewide office, though. So for some of the big flashy ones, Doug Jones for governor received the endorsement. Basically the entire Democratic slate for the statewide offices. There were over 40 candidates who addressed the convention this week, which seemed like a good number. This was my first time to be a delegate at this particular convention. So I'm not sure, how that compares to other years, but there was clearly an interest among candidates to speak to labor and try to speak to our issues. A couple other things I noticed, there were some educators running for office, which obviously speaks to my heart as a former educator and a public school advocate. So that's really exciting to see. A lot of the candidates who spoke to us did come from working class backgrounds, and I thought that was a positive sign. And the last thing I'll say about it, beyond just, again, go check the Facebook page for the Alabama AFL-CIO. Go check out the endorsements, and share that with your fellow members. But the last thing I'll say about it is, as a first-time delegate to that convention, I did look around the room and notice that there weren't a lot of folks under the age of 50 in that room. I counted 4, including me and Jacob. So, I think that's something we need to be cognizant of as a labor movement. How are we building up the next generation of leaders? And I also think, as you listen to this, if you belong to a labor union in Alabama or Tennessee or wherever, get involved in the state federation, get involved in your local labor council, get involved in these political conventions. We need you there. We need the next generation of leaders stepping up to the plate and having influence in this process. I think that's going to be really, really important because, the folks who are making these decisions, we want to make sure it reflects the diversity of our movement. And so if you've never been a delegate, if you've never run for delegate, if you're not even sure how to run for delegate, start looking into that. It's a really powerful way to get involved, to meet brothers and sisters from other unions, and to shape the direction of labor in your state and region.
Last week we got the new jobs report that came out, and really not good. In addition to 23,000 jobs being lost, the last 2 months were revised down by about 100,000 jobs. So the labor market looks like it might not be as stable as we have been thinking. And, that really just goes to, the sort of general trend of economic malaise during the second Trump administration, the Iran war, the tariffs, everything that he's been doing has really been basically making the economy worse and making, making the rich better off. I mean, right now, as we're doing this Iran war, as gas prices are going through the roof, workers at BP in Indiana have been locked out for almost 5 months, and BP is making record profits. The labor share of income in the United States, so, you think about all of the revenue that's generated in the country, and the amount that goes to labor has fallen to its lowest level in 100 years. 43% of the nation's income is going to labor, the rest of it going to capital. And that matches, we covered pretty closely the big three contract negotiations with the UAW some 3 years ago in 2023. And the improvements to workers at the big three automakers, to their wages and working conditions, were real. I mean, there are some people that were temps at the beginning of that contract who were making, $14, $15 an hour. And by the end of this contract, by 2028, they'll be making $50 an hour, right? I mean, that's just life-changing amounts of money in 5 years. And yet, you take all of the improvements, the calculation was that the delta was going to be something like $8 to $10 billion over the 5-year term. And the companies were crying poor about this. They were saying that that's going to completely bankrupt the company. Well, immediately, it's crazy. Go back and look at this. Immediately, like the month after the contracts were negotiated and ratified and signed, GM spent $10 billion on stock buybacks. They have spent that much more again and again. I think since the contract has been negotiated, GM has spent something like $30 billion on stock buybacks and dividends for shareholders and things like that. And they were talking about this $8 billion increase in payments to labor was going to bankrupt the company. And they spent 3 times more than that on owners who are not, let's remember, the workers, let's remember, are the ones actually building the cars, actually sweating, getting injured on the job. Last week, a Stellantis worker died on the job. So, the workers are the ones actually producing the things, actually risking their lives, and the amount of money more that they're getting is less than the people who just have money. That's insane. That is absolutely and so that is there was a really big kerfuffle on Twitter about this sort of dynamic, about the fact that the cost of living has increased, wages are stagnant, and it kind of bubbled up to the surface in the form of discourse about a $20 burrito. And so that really kind of split people on the right, and you had folks like Matt Walsh. Interestingly enough, he's somebody that we've talked about on the program who has, who is not pro-union, has been anti-worker a lot in the past. But on this subject, I think he's trying to play to the more populist side of his audience, and he said, not to change the subject from burritos, but when I was earning poverty wages in my 20s, I used to go to Subway nearly every day and get a foot-long Italian sub for $5. It was generally the only big meal I would eat in a day. If I was hungry later at night, I could always swing by McDonald's and grab a chicken sandwich for $1. All of these people are screaming about, quote, eating at home, unquote, but I basically never made meals at home in those days, and I was able to get by. You used to be able to survive on low wages without making meals from scratch. If that's not possible anymore, then it's a sign that our standard of living is declining, and that's a problem. You should care about that. You should care about that. Anyway, I went to a Subway recently, and that same sandwich was $13. McDonald's, of course, doesn't sell anything for $1 anymore. And so, and if you look at some of the data, the amount of money spent on food at home has increased by 30-something% over the last few, since 2020. And wages have not increased for most people by 30%. And people are buying less than they used to. They're buying less food than they used to, and they're buying less expensive food than they used to. And so one of the people that has weighed in on this conversation, Ben Shapiro, is like, well, percentage of income spent on food is the same as it was in 2020, and he doesn't account for the fact that people are, the statistics also show that people are buying less food. People are buying less expensive food. They're having to substitute, and so every time you buy something that is less than you used to, maybe you are spending the same portion of your income on food, but you're not getting the same thing literally, right? And so Matt Walsh, interestingly enough, has come down on, like, it seems bad, actually, that we're under the presidency. All levels of government, basically, are controlled by Republicans, and we're not able to do anything about this, and that seems like something that's worth talking about, whereas people like Ben Shapiro, Dan Crenshaw is another person who's weighed in on this. He said, just hearing about this dumb $20 burrito debate, so just thought I'd make losers on social media angry before going to bed. Stop whining, get a job, eat ramen like the rest of us did in college on a budget with 4 roommates. The market doesn't care what you think something, quote, should cost. Only communists care. They set prices, remember? Then everyone starves, remember? Are you a communist? Are you an American adult male capable of handling his own crap? And so, Crenshaw's has really made it kind of to the top of the algorithm for a lot of people, because this is a kind of general dynamic where people who are dead set on supporting Trump and the Republican administration at every turn have made this sort of shift. Under the Biden years, when cost of living was increasing, they were saying that the Biden administration needs to react, needs to do something. It's the Biden administration's fault. And the people who are complaining about the cost of living are right to complain because things are getting worse, right? And so there are people that were saying that who are now saying things like what Dan Crenshaw is saying, but he had the bad fortune to have tweeted about it under the Biden administration. So you can really compare kind of like for like how he's reacting now under the Trump administration when people are complaining about the cost of living compared to when people were complaining about the cost of living under the Biden administration. So here's what he said back in 2022 or 23, I think. He said, America, our food prices are too high. What are you doing about inflation? Biden administration. Just be vegan and stop complaining, you bunch of rubes. And so, ramen is vegan, right? Isn't ramen a vegan food, Adam? I don't actually eat ramen that often. I'm more of like a chicken and rice kind of guy. But it's just noodles and water, right? I would assume it's vegan. And so he's literally telling people be vegan and stop complaining. And if you complain, you're a communist. And this is another one of the things that always kind of makes me...
I've met a lot of communists now that I think about it. Like, yeah. I thought that I didn't know many communists in Alabama, but apparently
everybody's a
by
communist.
The Crenshaw standard.
It's just like
I've met a lot. Like, the revolution is coming, y'all.
It's just like the Matt Walsh has been on this series, which is really like... super racist and bigoted. He's been kind of delving into the history of the civil rights movement and unveiling that actually the civil rights movement was led by socialists and communists. And so his takeaway from that is I've talked to Dale about this before. Dale thinks it's bad because for the same reason that I think for the same reason that I think it's not good kind of politically, because in what Matt Walsh takes from this, civil rights was led in no small part, and it's true, by socialists and communists. Therefore, the civil rights movement was probably actually kind of bad and not good. But I think that probably most people that are not sort of, knuckle dragging bigots, that is going to endear them further to socialism, right? And communism. Because, most people, when you hear this thing that everybody universally thinks was a good thing, that nobody thinks was bad, everybody thinks it's good that black people can vote now, that black people can sit at the bar, everyone thinks that's good. Oh, that was led by socialists. Maybe socialism isn't actually that bad. And so, Dale agreed with me. He was like, yeah, no, it's crazy. It's terrible. And probably, I don't think he said bigoted. I think it's bigoted because it's crazy. But so here we're doing the same thing. There's a similar dynamic, right? Dan Crenshaw is saying, oh, if you care about the cost of goods, if you care about people's standard of living, that makes you a communist. Well, I think most people are not going to be like,
never mind.
Yeah, never mind.
I'm not broke enough because I'm loyal to the free market, to capitalism. Please, sir, let me lick your boots some more. I would hate to be considered a communist. Oh, no.
Yeah. So I don't think this is going to work. But, it's crazy seeing people doing totally 180 from where they were before. And trying to make people feel comfortable with the scraps that we're being given. And there was a Teamster at a Trump rally last week that I want to play a little bit for you, because he, unfortunately, this Teamster is really sort of, being like, well, I'm thankful for some of these scraps that we've gotten from the Trump administration. Let's play clip 1 for us.
To the unions, we don't all get tips, no. But we do work long hours, hard hours. 96 hours a week, yeah, most of the times I'm not up on current.
Okay, let's pause that for a second. 96 hours a week, that's crazy. You shouldn't be working that much, and the labor movement has really done itself a disservice by allowing that to happen in exchange for higher wages and stuff. Let's continue.
I don't have a clue what's going on the planet, but I can tell you what's going on in Las Vegas. I can tell you where the shows are. I can tell you we fill the
That's
bed.
enough. We'll stop playing the clip because we're coming up on a break, but there you go. So he works so many hours, he doesn't have a clue what's going on the planet, but he's thankful that he doesn't have to pay taxes on his overtime, on the overtime which is, look, that's a real thing, but maybe you should make enough money that you don't have to work 96 hours, and then you can afford to pay taxes on 40 hours of income a week and be able to afford a good standard of living.
And actually see your family. Maybe know what's going on in the planet.
Yes, and not just sponsoring your family. And then, maybe being able to figure out kind of what's going on with the planet. Maybe figuring out that the IBEW has lost, just the IBEW, tens of thousands of jobs because of the Trump administration's cut to clean energy tax credits. Maybe you would be able to figure out things like how the Trump administration is trying to destroy federal worker unions, trying to destroy the standard of living for federal workers and things like that, and be a part of a movement and help other people, not just people within your sort of small silo, get a few more scraps, right? So, very funny, $20 burrito stuff there. Would be interested in your thoughts. Give us a text, 844-899-TVLR. That's 844-899-8857. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back. We're going to be talking to the communications director for the United Farm Workers. Stay tuned.
The attorneys at Maples, Tucker & Jacobs have stood with the working people of Alabama for over 40 years, providing skilled legal representation for your workplace injury claims. When you are injured on the job, it can be a scary time. The attorneys at Maples, Tucker & Jacobs have the experience to guide you through the process to make sure that you and your family are properly taken care of and your rights are protected. If you need help, call the attorneys at Maples, Tucker, and Jacobs at 855-617-9333 or visit online at www.mtnj.com. No representation is made that the quality of legal services provided is greater than the quality of legal services provided by other law firms.
Support for the Valley Labor Report comes from the International Federation of Professional and Technical Engineers Union. Learn more by visiting www.ifpte.org.
Are you looking for a better future, a career that can have you set for life, and to be a part of something that's bigger than yourself? If you are, then consider a skilled trades apprenticeship with the International Union of Painters and Allied Trades. The work of IUPAT is all around us, from the industrial painters who work on the bridges to drywall finishers, floor coverers, the glazers who install the glass in our skylines, and so much more. With an IUPAT apprenticeship, you earn while you learn and receive benefits while learning the trade, including a pension. We provide world-class education free of charge. That's right, no student debt. Our starting salaries for apprentices that graduate is above the national median salary with benefits for entire families. And you have the flexibility to take your trade wherever you'd like in the country to work. IUPAT District Council 77 covers our entire region, so give Adam Booth a call at 205-603-3142 for more information. Again, that phone number is 205-603-3142. Come build a better future with us today and join IUPAT.
We're the nurses, firefighters, and claims representatives that help keep our government services running. We respond to natural disasters. We care for our nation's veterans, and we investigate discrimination in the workplace. We are federal and D.C. government workers, and we are proud to serve the American people. Working in more than 70 agencies across the government, we know we can fulfill our mission because our union has our back. Learn more at afge.org. Paid for by the American Federation of Government Employees, AFL-CIO.
Since 1889, the National Association of Letter Carriers has protected the rights of city carriers as they deliver the mail and offer support for their community. The Alabama State Association of Letter Carriers makes their legislative voices heard when it comes to issues involving the U.S. Postal Service and the working members of the union. The National Association of Letter Carriers has been longtime supporters of the Muscular Dystrophy Association and the Stamp Out Hunger Food Drive. This message is sponsored by the Alabama Association of Letter Carriers. To learn more, visit NALC.org. Unite Here is also a supporter of the Valley Labor Report. They are a labor union that represents 300,000 working people across Canada and the United States. Their members work in the hotel, gaming, food service, manufacturing, textile, distribution, laundry, transportation, and airport industries. You can learn more about Unite Here at unitehere.org.
Come all you poor workers, good news to you I'll tell, how the good old union has come in here to dwell.
A battle in the heart of Alabama caught our attention. Coal miners in one community, they've been on strike now for months.
Working as long as 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, in some of the most dangerous conditions.
I really think that the labor movement is the single greatest force for democracy in the history of the United States.
The story of Alabama is a story of not just resilience, but of militancy.
I say no contract, you say no code. No contract, no contract.
If we ain't all free, ain't none of us free.
You're listening to Alabama's only union talk radio show, The Valley Labor Report, with Adam Keller and Jacob Morrison.
That's right, folks. From the mountains of Tennessee to the bayous of Louisiana, broadcasting live online and on the radio from the heart of the Tennessee Valley, the Spice Radio Studios in Huntsville, Alabama. This is the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison. My co-host is Adam Keller. We just finished talking about how Republicans are telling folks to eat cake and about Alabama's labor movement's endorsements. Soon we'll be talking to the communications director for the United Farm Workers about how the Trump administration is hurting both immigrant workers and immigration hawks. Find out how that is the case momentarily. If you haven't gotten enough of us by the time that we wrap up here on the radio, or if you just want to see more of us throughout the week, you can find us anywhere you find anything online, in particular at our website, tvlr.fm. But we are also on YouTube, Facebook, and wherever you get your podcasts, all at The Valley Labor Report. Just a reminder, your support helps us stay on the air. Our huge source of our funding comes directly from our listeners. So if you want to become a sustaining donor or make a one-time donation, you can go to tvlr.fm/donate or patreon.com/The Valley Labor Report. We've got a bunch of cool merch for sale at tvlr.fm/store. And finally, if you're a member of a union, then you should get your local, your district council, your region, or your international to sponsor the show. You can reach out to us for more details on that.
Hey y'all, let me add a disclaimer that any viewpoints or opinions expressed in this program belong solely to their author and do not necessarily represent any organization or sponsor. And we want to welcome all of our listeners, whether you're on YouTube, Facebook, WVNN, WZZA, WHIV, WGOW, WMSP, WCPT, KTNF, Means TV, or through your favorite podcast app. We are proud to be part of the Labor Radio Podcast Network and encourage our listeners to check that out at laborradionetwork.org. And as most of you know, we are not media professionals, just a few diehard unionists who want to amplify the voices of the working class, especially here in the American South. We're hoping this project can make a difference on that front, and we can't do it without you. So we want to thank everyone for tuning in. Whether you're a loyal fan or first-time listener, we appreciate you spending some time with us. Make sure you like and subscribe and share the stream.
Absolutely. Appreciate everybody hanging out with us in the chat. Go ahead and like and subscribe if you haven't yet. Thanks Union Joe, Union Gus, Tammy, B18 Tuner, and Randy. Thank you all for tuning in. And Joe, really appreciate everybody hanging out with us. Every week in the South, workers organize new unions, they bargain new contracts, they fight for good legislation and against bad legislation. These are some of the stories that we could find from July 31st to August 7th. This is Last Week in Southern Labor. Over the last week, 248 workers in 8 bargaining units have gone public with their union campaigns. 71 workers in 2 bargaining units are trying to decertify their union. 101 workers across 3 bargaining units withdrew their petition for a union election. 127 workers across 5 bargaining units unionized, and 66 workers across 3 bargaining units voted against unionization. Here are the details in new union campaigns. 50 workers at Butterball in Rayford, North Carolina, filed a petition to hold a union election with the United Food and Commercial Workers, UFCW Local 1208. 19 workers at Carnes Volunteer Fire Department in Knoxville, Tennessee, filed a petition to hold a union election with the United Firefighters of Carnes, an IAFF Local 4900. 14 workers at Panola Harrison Electric Cooperative in Marshall, Texas, filed a petition to hold a union election with the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, IBEW, Local 738. 51 workers at Carvana Logistics in Charlotte, North Carolina, filed a petition to hold a union election with Teamsters Local 71, and 17 workers at Starbucks in Louisville, Kentucky, filed a petition to hold a union election with Starbucks Workers United. In election results, 10 workers at ABM Industry Groups in Louisville, Kentucky voted 9-0 in favor of unionization with the Teamsters Local 89. 11 workers at AEP Texas Company in Uvalde, Texas voted 8-1 in favor of unionization with the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, IBEW Local 738. The employer withdrew a petition for a union election among 9 workers at Volunteer Ministry Center in Knoxville, Tennessee with the Service Employees International Union, SEIU Local Local 205. 85 workers at Lockheed Martin in Fort Smith, Arkansas, withdrew their petition for a union election with the International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers, IAMAW. 20 workers at Starbucks Corporation in Navarre, Florida, voted 10-9 in favor of unionization with Starbucks Workers United. 11 workers at Texas Public Radio in San Antonio, Texas, voted 5-6 against unionization with SAG-AFTRA. And 9 workers at Build-A-Bear in Collierville, Tennessee, voted against unionization with UFCW Local 1529. In strikes and bargaining, 60 bus drivers for the Jackson, Mississippi Transit System, JTRAN, are crossing 1 month on strike as MV Transportation continues to refuse to offer a fair contract. We talked to the president of the local on the show when the strike was about 2 weeks old. He said that they were striking over low wages and a lack of training. Unfortunately, it seems the city has taken the side of the company, not only allowing the company to bring in scabs, which they are paying more than double what they paid the union members for when they were on the job, but they also waived the requirement for bus drivers to have a CDL if they wanted to scab. That seems like a bad idea to me. The company claims it is now fully operational with scab labor, with apparently all bus routes being run and 100% of paratransit requests being filled. The two sides entered mediation talks last week, but they haven't gone anywhere. According to the union, talks are scheduled to continue next week.
I did want to add, I believe that the mayor of Jackson comes out of IBEW.
No way.
I am pretty positive that was the case, unless things have changed recently. So I want to do some more research on this, and I would love to know kind of where the mayor is sitting in this position here in Jackson. So shout out to ATU and sending our love and solidarity with them.
Wow. Interesting. In political and legislative updates, Trump's own government has said that Doge's purported savings are 96% lies. You all remember Doge, the project where a megalomaniacal billionaire, now trillionaire, unleashed racist 20-somethings to wreak havoc in the federal government, in departments and programs that Musk didn't know about, much less the racist 20-somethings. They set out to cut $2 trillion in waste, and when the program closed, they claimed $215 billion in savings, $110 billion of which came from grant cancellations. Of course, that number doesn't take into account the value lost from the canceled contracts, the increased overtime that federal workers who are left have to work to pick up the slack that was left by the hundreds of thousands of workers exiting the federal workforce, or the delays in execution of the mission. But that was their number. Well, now that the dust has settled, people that are actually experts in auditing are trying to pick up the pieces and assess the damage. Trump's Government Accountability Office, GAO, has said in a new report that they could not verify 96% of the purported Doge grant savings. The report says that Doge didn't even use their own stated methodology to track savings, that Doge failed to actually terminate many of the contracts that they claimed the savings from canceling for, and claimed savings from IT upgrades that were never actually made. Also, last week was a big week for union endorsements in the state of Alabama. The North Alabama Area Labor Council made its endorsements in the Huntsville City Council Districts 2 and 3 races, throwing its weight behind Thomas Cassez and Liliana Painter, respectively. The council said those candidates have committed to supporting responsible development and supporting working people. The Alabama AFL-CIO, the State Federation of Unions, also announced its endorsements for statewide races, state legislative races, the state Supreme Court, and the State Board of Education. The AFL-CIO mostly endorsed Democrats, but also 9 Republicans and 2 independents. If we missed something, let us know about your union updates at tvlr.fm/contact, and we might try to include it on next week's roundup. Also, subscribe to the newsletter at tvlr.fm to get the exhaustive version of Last Week in Southern Labor in your inbox every single week. Really excited for our guest. We're going to be talking to Antonio DeLaura, the communications director for the United Farm Workers. Antonio, welcome to the Valley Labor Report.
Hey, thanks for having me. Sorry, I'm in my car.
No worries at all. Not a problem. We got lots of people calling in from all sorts of places. That's what happened when you're a union radio program. You have to talk to working people, so they kind of join you as they can. Like I said, you're the communications director for the United Farm Workers, and so you obviously have an expertise in the working conditions of farm workers and some of the things that are affecting them. And one of the things that we have been tracking is the cuts to the wages of migrant workers by the Trump administration. Can you tell us how they did that? Like, what was the mechanism by which the Trump administration has gone about cutting the wages of migrant workers? And how is the United Farm Workers, your union, fighting back?
Yeah, well, I'll answer the second one first and just say we're suing. But this is going to sound very technical, but basically there is the federal H-2A guest worker program. So this is a guest worker visa program where agricultural employers are allowed to go outside of the country, bring in workers on a visa, and have them work seasonally in agricultural jobs. This is inherently pretty problematic because workers' visas are controlled by their employers. I always say, imagine at-will employment, but it's your immigration status, where your employer can just boot you and kick you out of the country if, actually they don't have to give a reason. They can also just not call you back next year because every year you have to see if your visa is going to get renewed by your employer. So the power dynamic already is pretty bad between employers and workers. And the federal government sets the wage rates for these programs. And this is actually something called the adverse effect wage rule. It's called that because it's supposed to prevent an adverse effect on local workers. The theory is the federal government will set a wage that's high enough that it's higher or at least meeting the average wage. It's literally supposed to be the average wage per state that the local farm workers are getting. And the idea there is, well, we won't have this guest worker program undercut the local workers, right? That would be crazy. That's actually something that the statute, when Congress set this program up back in the 80s, that's required by the law. What the Trump administration went and did is actually unilaterally, through executive action, said, actually, the federal government is going to set this wage rate way lower than what local workers are making. That obviously is the opposite of what it's supposed to be for, because now you're creating that adverse effect that the adverse effect wage rule is supposed to prevent. And so we believe that's plainly illegal. That's illegal under the existing statute. And so we're in federal court right now to try to reverse that wage cut.
So because, the wages are different, it's meant to be sort of tagged to the local wage market. It's going to be different in every state. But can you give us like a general dynamic? Like what kind of wages are we talking ballpark? Like are we talking under the Biden administration that the wage was somewhere between $17 and $20 an hour and now it's $13 to $15? Are we talking a general like 20% cut or a 50%? Like can help me kind of get an idea for what the real world impacts are going to be on the ground.
Yeah, I mean, it's really dramatic. So in most states, it's either, in California, basically we're going from $19 an hour back down to the state minimum wage, which is $16.90 an hour. In states like Texas or Alabama or Georgia, I should actually mention for this Southern podcast, actually the South has the highest percentage of H-2A workers in the agricultural workforce. Georgia and Florida lead the way with nearly 40% of their farm workers coming to those states on this agricultural visa program. So, for example, in Texas, it's going from $15 an hour to $9 an hour.
Wow.
So we're talking, really significant wage decreases, $3 to $5 an hour nationwide, depending on which state you're in. That's going to add the Trump administration's own rule actually estimates that $2.46 billion in wages are going to be transferred from workers back to employers. And that's actually only counting the H-2A workers themselves. There was an Economic Policy Institute study that suggests that the total impact when you take into account the way this is going to undercut local wages and the way local workers are also going to have their wage cuts because, why would an employer pay them more when they have a cheaper option now? The total cumulative impact could be as high as $5 billion in lost wages from farm workers transferred back to employers. And we just have to remember, these are already some of the hardest working and lowest paid workers in our country. These are the folks who are out there in the fields picking our fruits and vegetables, when it's 106 degrees Fahrenheit out, as it's been here in the California Central Valley the past week. So it's a really, really cruel thing. It's an unjust thing. And obviously it completely flies in the face of this idea that this administration is looking out for American workers, trying to protect Americans' jobs or American wages. This is a direct example of the Trump administration has actually made it cheaper and easier to bring in cheap foreign labor in such a way that it undercuts American workers.
Yes, you're saying you mentioned that it's easier to bring in foreign workers now than it was before. I want to talk about that in just a second, but I want to stay on this wage dynamic and the H-2A program sort of as it exists, because I've been following your work for a while. You've written a few pieces for Unheard, UnHERD. It's sort of like a kind of meant to be like a heterodox sort of populist right left kind of contrarian, but you've got really good stuff in there, and one of the kind of contrarian things maybe that you've said in there is that ironically the bargaining power of workers under these H-2A programs is probably less, like it's probably worse for the workers and for Native people to expand this program than just to have undocumented people, because ironically, in your telling, undocumented workers have a little bit more leverage than these folks, because undocumented workers, they're not, by nature of not being documented, they're not tied to one employer. And so if one employer gets too crazy, they can go and work for somebody else under the table, and they've got a little bit of flexibility by competition. But the H-2A program, you are tied to one employer, and sort of by nature of being in the H-2A program, these are workers that are presumably pretty committed to staying above board and not being undocumented. And so if you're an H-2A worker, you're committed to doing things the right way, and by being in the H-2A program, you're tied to this one employer, and if that one employer pays you less money or you want to organize against them, like you said, they can not only fire you, they can have you deported because you don't have that flexibility, because you're tied to them. And there's a sort of company town dynamic going on here. Like here in Huntsville, we've got the hospital is planning to build some workforce housing, and our labor council has pushed back against that a little bit and said, this is kind of potentially not good dynamics. And the CEO, I genuinely think the CEO doesn't understand why it's potentially bad, but just like this, if you are living as a nurse at Huntsville Hospital and their workforce housing, then if you get fired, you could be also evicted. And so that increases it increases the difficulty of the leverage, or it increases the leverage of the employer. And so there's a similar dynamic with this H-2A program. And did I sort of summarize that right?
Yeah, you got it. I mean, it's totally a company town dynamic. Under the H-2A program, employers are actually required to provide workers their housing. In some ways, you could think, oh, well, that's great. But what ends up happening, first of all, is employers cut corners because they want to provide the housing as cheaply as possible. So, I mean, I've personally seen, bunks, 8 guys sharing one room, sharing one toilet. I mean, really bad stuff. And then at the same time, again, it's this company town dynamic where people's housing is usually on company property. From a labor organizing point of view, getting access to these workers can be extremely difficult. Having workers, basically totally dependent. I mean, they need to ask employers for a ride to go to the grocery store. They need to, sometimes get permission to get access to phone lines. I mean, and sometimes, out here in these very rural areas, workers can really be trapped on company property. So yeah, the H-2A program, I would say it's bringing back indentured servitude. It's not just my opinion that they have less rights than undocumented workers. That's actually a matter of law. There is one federal labor law that protects farm workers. We're actually excluded from the National Labor Relations Act, which is its own long story and goes back to a lot of the ugly history in the South of, when the New Deal was happening, a lot of segregationist senators would not vote for the National Labor Relations Act if it also applied to agriculture, because they didn't want black sharecroppers or Mexican immigrants out west to have the same rights as white workers. So we're still excluded from to this day. But there is one federal law that protects farm workers. It's the Migrant and Seasonal Worker Protection Act. That law applies to undocumented workers. It explicitly does not apply to H-2A workers. So H-2A workers actually do not have, under the law, a private right of action. So if an employer, for example, gets seriously injured on the job, they actually cannot legally sue their employer for that the way a citizen worker might or the way an undocumented worker might. And so it's just factually true that these workers have less rights under the law than even undocumented workers. And to your point, most H-2A workers are here. They're trying to do it right. This is, quote, the legal way. It's a huge irony that actually, if you do it legally, you end up with less rights than folks who cross the border without papers. But the other thing that does happen, I should mention, is because these conditions on some of the H-2A farms are so awful, because they're trapped, because they're living on company housing, especially now that their wages are cut, we do see actually a fair amount of H-2A workers, definitely not the majority, but some folks every year do what's called absconding, which is literally they run away and they stay in this country and they try to find a different job, a better job. Maybe they'll go work somewhere else in the agricultural industry. Maybe they'll go work in construction. But there are people who actually become undocumented. They come in on the H-2A visa program, and after a year or two, they're just like, this is awful. And so they literally run away. And unfortunately, those people do become undocumented. And I could tell you the story of someone who came in as an H-2A worker, was horribly mistreated, left to try to find a better opportunity, became undocumented, got picked up by ICE. It was a whole thing, but it really speaks to this reality that we've got foreign workers that we're exploiting, and the state is using violence to keep them in line.
And so in addition to cutting their wages, the administration is now making it easier or lifting the cap on both the H-2A, which is kind of the more farm worker sort of stuff, and the H-2B, which is sort of the tech kind of people that I don't know why it is that we have different programs for these different groups of workers. But
so tech
explain that.
Tech is H-1B, and that's been a whole controversy, particularly on the right. That's kind of the Silicon Valley industry, bringing in a lot of tech workers from India or elsewhere in Asia. Then there's H-2A, and this is going to blow your mind. H-2A actually has no cap. So the Trump administration did not lift the cap. H-2A is already an uncapped program, which is ridiculous. So when you cut the wages, there's no legal limit to how many of these workers you can bring in. And if you start paying them less than Americans, then it gets really complicated very fast. I should mention, we have a bill to cap the H-2A program for the first time, to actually create a legal limit of 400,000 of these visas that you can bring in every year. Obviously, the agricultural industry opposes that, and they're actually trying to expand the definition of what counts as agriculture so they can bring in more of these visa workers to more industries, including things like truck drivers. So there's a number of jobs that are threatened by this program. And then H-2B is this other category. H-2B is basically like H-2A, but for non-agricultural seasonal industries. So think landscaping, think restaurant work. Down in Louisiana, people bring them, for example, for the shrimping boats. So there's a lot of different niche industries that the H-2B program would apply to. That program is capped. That cap was at $65,000 visas a year. Excuse me. The Trump administration doubled that, so now it's over 120,000 of these H-2B visas that can be brought in. That's something that employers have really asked for. I should mention Donald Trump himself is both an H-2A and H-2B employer. He uses H-2A visa workers on his vineyards. He uses H-2B visa workers at his hotels. And so, it's a real existential threat, when you think about the effort that, for example, hotel workers have gone to unionize in a number of cities and states across this country, including in the South. H-2B threatens all of those union hotel jobs because it gives employers an option to, hey, let's bring in a foreign worker on a guest worker visa, whose visa we control, who we can basically mistreat. And if they complain, we just won't renew their visa or we'll send them home. And so it gives workers in foreign countries, they're living in fear. Workers here in our country are being displaced. And then employers get cheap labor on demand that they can get rid of whenever it becomes inconvenient.
I want to talk to you some about how the quote unquote the right is reacting to this. I think, as far as I can tell, what I'm seeing is like not much. But how does the administration justify it? Like, what is their how do they justify simultaneously cutting wages, making it easier for foreign workers to get in, while they're doing all of this, the ICE stuff and trying to, on the theory that we need Americans to fill these jobs? How are they justifying this?
Well, this is a huge irony, and I think this is what really gets to the hypocrisy of the administration, and really this is why they're not talking. I mean, one of the things I think is interesting is anytime they do a raid, anywhere in the country, they put out, what I call deportation porn. They tweet out these videos of families crying. They are posting these videos of people in chains being loaded onto planes. They want to promote their mass deportation policies. I mean, I always look at that stuff and I think this looks god awful, but clearly they want to promote this idea that they're actually, making America white again, or whatever it is you want to say. The truth is, though, when you actually look at the numbers, they're actually expanding the guest worker programs basically just as fast, if not faster, as they're actually deporting people. So, this idea that these policies are going to lead to higher wages or more jobs for citizen workers, I mean, that's just a total fantasy, and they're undercutting that themselves, because the through line here is that they want American business owners, American big business, big employers, big ag companies, big hotel companies. They want those industries have the president's ear, have the people around him's ear, and they're saying, we need cheap labor, we need cheap labor, we need cheap labor. And the Trump administration says, okay. I think the guest worker programs, we really have to think of it almost as a kind of outsourcing or offshoring. It's just that instead of the company shutting down and going overseas, you're bringing the workers from overseas here. But it's the same negative impact on local workers. And one of the things that I talk a lot to my conservative friends, to my friends who may have voted for Trump, I always say, look, I understand if you believed that, we needed a closed border to protect American jobs. Like, I can appreciate why you thought that, but you are being used, you are being had. That's not what they're doing. They're using these raids to make, people feel big in some way, that, oh, look, we're getting rid of this Mexican family. But at the end of the day, they're actually not helping address what that root cause was, that root concern about, how do I have a good job? How do I protect my wages? I don't want to have to compete in my own country unfairly with foreign labor that'll work for cheaper. That concern is going completely unaddressed, and in fact, it's being made worse. So what I argued in my piece, which was kind of to a conservative audience, is saying, look, if what you really care is American jobs, instead of expanding these guest worker programs, why don't we just legalize the people we already have? Why don't we just let the people who are already here, who have been here for years, who aren't criminals, who pay taxes, who in most cases already have American families, American children, why don't we give them a pathway to citizenship, let them compete in the market, on the labor market, equally, fairly, with the same labor laws and the same labor rights as anyone else. And that way we're all competing on a fair and level playing field. And also, by the way, that way we can organize a real labor movement that's going to push wages up for everyone instead of down for everyone. And of course, the irony is the Trump administration, the way they justified it, you asked me, how are they justifying these wage cuts? It's the most cynical thing. In the rule that they put out, it actually says, well, we're concerned about labor shortages in agriculture because of our own deportation policies. So that's why we need to make it cheaper for employers to bring in more foreign workers. And so it's just like, well, why don't you just don't do either of those? Let the farm workers who've been here, who are undocumented, become citizens, and then pay farm workers enough that maybe some Americans want to do these jobs too, because there's no reason these jobs can't be done by Americans. It's just that they're paid so poorly that a lot of Americans, frankly, would rather work retail or fast food or some other job that pays more than working in the agricultural fields. But there's no reason why, American workers could not do these agricultural jobs if they were just paid fairly, treated well, had basic safety on the job, had benefits, had everything that we as a union fight for.
You wrote in a recent piece speaking about how the Trump administration is sort of undermining workers' rights through these changes to visa policies. You said, unbelievable as it may seem to many conservatives, it was the Biden administration that sought to protect jobs of American workers against displacement by H-2A workers. Can you talk a little bit about what the Biden administration did and how, even absent some, grand bargain, there are things that the executive branch can do unilaterally and has done unilaterally to try to move closer to the direction where we have, higher wages for migrant workers who are coming in, and more and making the competition, leveling the playing field sort of for American workers.
Yeah, so the Biden administration had a farm worker protection rule that was all about trying to make the H-2A program less exploitative. One of the things they did there is they set reasonable wages for it that were equal to what the local workers are making. And so in that sense, they disincentivized employers from hiring H-2A workers because, hey, look, you're going to be paying the same thing either way, so might as well pay the local worker what they're expecting rather than have to bring in workers from elsewhere. There's also a number of, really basic reforms that rule did. For example, it made it illegal for employers to confiscate workers' passports, which was a thing that was happening and was just facilitating, again, this incredible amount of abuse, exploitation, trafficking, labor trafficking, where H-2A workers were being illegally told to work additional jobs by their employers beyond what the visa was supposed to be for. Actually, Georgia had one of the biggest human and labor trafficking cases in the H-2A program come from something called Operation Blooming Onion. This was a 6-year-long federal investigation that broke while Biden was in office, where federal prosecutors literally called it, quote, modern day slavery. That's in the federal indictment in Operation Blooming Onion, where literally hundreds of H-2A workers were being literally enslaved in Georgia. And it's just these sorts of things happen. The Biden administration tried to stop it. And in doing so, that's obviously good for the H-2A workers, but it's also good for American workers. And I think that's one thing that we really need to internalize as a labor movement, as Americans, which is anytime you have any population of workers that's excluded from basic rights, that's going to be bad for every worker because, workers' rights are only as strong as the rights of the weakest worker are. Because if you have a pool of workers that you can pay less, employers are going to go there. And we all know that. And so it's in all of our interest as working people to have immigrant workers, undocumented workers, H-2A workers, guest workers, right? We need to think of these folks as potential allies, as fellow workers. And most importantly, if we don't want them to undercut our wages, we need to make sure that their wages aren't legally lower than ours. And so that's something that I think the Biden administration, ironically, was much better at in terms of America first than the Trump administration, because the Trump administration is not prioritizing workers; it's prioritizing business.
There's ironically, I think that the administration is really sort of just upping a dynamic that we've seen for, the last 20 or 30 years. There's a clip that goes around every now and then about of Milton Friedman saying that undocumented immigrants are good, actually. Immigrants, legal immigrants those are the things that are bad, but undocumented immigrants are good because they cost less and they're better for the economy and you can exploit them more and they don't have access to the welfare state and everything like that. But they need to stay undocumented. They need to stay illegal. And there's this dynamic where the business class wants not just immigration, they want immigration with less rights, right? They don't want people to be able to come here with full participation in, and you talk about that in one of your pieces about how Stephen Miller sort of lays this out, how that is kind of his issue with immigration, is people coming here and having the full political rights rather than just being a servant class that has no say in the direction of our politics. And so while the business class wants these people to come in here with less rights so that they can be exploited, there's this nativist sort of right-wing reaction that ensures that happens, that people who come here they do have less rights. And so you're seeing that right now with the deportation porn, as you said, and the increased exploitation of migrant workers. And it seems to me that it's just like kind of elevated on both ends.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I think Stephen Miller is a problematic guy in many ways, but one of the things that strikes me is how much he admires actually the Gulf, the Arab Gulf states. And I've started using this term American kafala, right? Where really what's happening is we are moving in the direction of the kafala guest worker systems of the Gulf, where, in Qatar, 80% of the population are foreign workers. The citizen population is actually really small and very affluent because they're getting all the oil money, and they don't do any real work. They just pay all these foreign servants to do it. But these foreign workers have no rights, have no ability to become citizens. And so it's just this kind of permanent underclass that's excluded from labor and political rights. And of course, I should mention, we don't have to go abroad to look at examples here, right? I mean, the through line in American agriculture specifically, certainly, thinking about the South, right? We might call it the plantation class, and not just the business class. And throughout American history, there have been consistent efforts by big agriculture, by the plantation class, to have cheap labor that is excluded from the full rights of citizenship, right? The most extreme version we ever saw of that was slavery, right? That's what that was. At its core, it was a system of labor exploitation. It was racialized to justify excluding these folks from labor rights, from political rights, from citizenship rights. After the Civil War, again, we had Jim Crow, which in many ways functioned to keep those freed slaves still in a position of vulnerability where they were easily exploited and they were denied, for example, voting rights, the full rights of citizenship. That's then what undocumented workers became, right? Undocumented workers today are our agricultural labor force, for the most part, who are excluded from political rights and from citizenship rights. And now that Donald Trump is carrying out this mass deportation plan, what the plantation class is saying, okay, we have no problem with you deporting people as long as we still get our cheap labor. And that's what we want. And the Trump administration basically has said, okay, well, we'll make sure you do get your cheap labor. We'll cut the wages. We'll expand these guest worker programs. We'll strip the few rights that these programs do have. And that's obviously bad for American workers, right? I mean, I think it's important to remember a lot of folks who objected to slavery back in the 1850s, right? People like Abraham Lincoln, some of them were concerned about the slaves themselves, but many were just saying, hey, I as a free citizen don't want to have to compete unfairly with plantations that are being operated by tons of slaves. How can I, as a small farmer, compete with a big plantation that has a bunch of slaves that's not paying, right? I can't compete with that, right? That's where this free soil movement came. That's a tradition that merged with the more radical abolitionist tradition to create the Republican Party that did end slavery back in the day. It's a big irony, right? The parties have kind of flipped on this issue, but yeah, I think there's a long history in America of what I call the plantation class looking for cheap labor, trying to make sure that labor is excluded from the rights of citizenship. And this is just a persistent battle in American history. This is our chapter of it. And for me, I really believe the solution is we need to stop the raids because workers cannot be organized when they're living in fear. We need to, at least reform and limit these guest worker programs so that we don't have this backdoor that undercuts American workers legally. And then most importantly, we need to make sure that every worker who's working in our society has the full rights and benefits and responsibilities of citizenship so that we're all competing on an equal playing field. That's the way forward, I think.
Antonio DeLaura is the communications director for the United Farm Workers. Really enjoyed the conversation. Thank you so much for your time. Hope you'll come back. Is there anything else you want to leave us with before we let you go?
Well, I'll just say, I mentioned the South is a big battlefield in this. A lot of the H-2A guest worker expansion has been in the South, and some of the members of Congress, most of the members of Congress, who are pushing to expand this program to make permanent the Trump wage cuts. A lot of these folks are in the South too. So if you are in the South and you're listening to this, call your member of Congress, please do, and tell them that you think the H-2A program is modern day slavery and you would like to see that program capped and not expanded. That would be really helpful for us, regardless of what party your member of Congress is. That would be a very helpful thing you can do.
All right. Thank you very much for your time. We're going to take a break, folks. We'll be right back. If you want a good-paying union job in construction or nuclear plant maintenance in North Alabama, then you need to talk to the Laborers International Union of North America, LIUNA Local 366. They're recruiting for jobs right now, so if you're interested, please apply online at liunalocal366.com or call their hiring hall at 256-383-2466. That's 256-383-2466. No experience is needed, and we offer free training, but you must be able to pass a background check and a drug test. Local hiring that grows our community with good-paying jobs and benefits is our mission. Live better, work union. Local 366, feel the power. The Valley Labor Report is also supported by the Communication Workers of America. Learn more at cwa-union.org.
Support for this program is provided by the International Association for Machinists and Aerospace Workers, Local Lodge 44 in Decatur, Alabama. Learn more at iamaw44.org.
The Valley Labor Report is also sponsored by the United Automobile, Aerospace, and Agricultural Implement Workers of America, better known as the UAW. They are one of the largest and most diverse unions in North America, with members in virtually every sector of the economy. UAW-represented workplaces range from multinational corporations, small manufacturers, and state and local governments, to colleges and universities, hospitals, and private nonprofit organizations. The UAW has more than 400,000 active members and more than 580,000 retired members in the United States, Canada, and Puerto Rico. You can learn more about the UAW and join at uaw.org. The Valley Labor Report is also sponsored by Labor Notes. Labor Notes is a media and organizing project that has been the voice of union activists who want to put the movement back in the labor movement since 1979. You can learn more about Labor Notes at labornotes.org.
The attorneys at Maples, Tucker & Jacobs have stood with the working people of Alabama for over 40 years, providing skilled legal representation for your workplace injury claims. When you are injured on the job, it can be a scary time. The attorneys at Maples, Tucker & Jacobs have the experience to guide you through the process to make sure that you and your family are properly taken care of and your rights are protected. If you need help, call the attorneys at Maples, Tucker & Jacobs at 855-617-9333 or visit online at www.mtnj.com. No representation is made that the quality of legal services provided is greater than the quality of legal services provided by other law firms.
Support for this program also comes from the Mid-South Council of Retail, Wholesale, and Department Store Union. Learn more at rwdsu.info.
Union leaders, do you want a powerful website and mobile app built just for your members? The Union Active system, created by Unions America, makes it easy to share news and documents, send alerts, and keep your members engaged anytime, anywhere. Trusted by thousands of unions, Union Active streamlines communication so you can focus on what matters most, your members. With real-time updates, secure messaging, and custom features built for unions, you'll keep your members informed and engaged 24/7. Get Union Active today. Visit unionactive.com to learn more. Union Active, the ultimate website and communication system for unions.
Come on, do poor workers, good news to you I'll tell. How the good old union has come in here to dwell.
Labor creates all wealth. All wealth should go to labor, and you're listening to the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison. My co-host is Adam Keller. If you have anything to add, you can give us a call. The phone number is 844-899-TVLR. That is 844-899-8857. We'll take calls as soon as we get into overtime, so if you want to go ahead and get in line, you should do that. 844-899-TVLR. You can also send us a text message at the same number, and we can read it. Adam, have you got some plugs for us?
I do. As always, I encourage folks to check out the trainings available from Labor Notes. Go to labornotes.org and learn more. A couple of the workshops they have coming up this month in August. They have a stewards workshop, Thinking Like an Organizer, on August 10th. And on August 18th, they have What to Do When Your Union Breaks Your Heart. That's when they do pretty often and can be very helpful for folks who are going through a tough time, maybe dealing with some challenges internally, whether it's, with your local or international or whatever the situation may be. I think it's a really helpful workshop. So again, go to labornotes.org, check those out. This past week, I led the Alabama virtual kickoff of Public School Strong and worked with Alabama Arise on that. And I want to make sure folks know that the next national organizing call for Public School Strong is Tuesday, August 11th at 6 p.m. Central. Friend of the show, Jennifer Berkshire, who was just on a couple weeks ago, she is going to be the headlining speaker of this call because they're going to be diving into the working class case for public education and building up pro-public education voters for these upcoming elections. So again, that is Tuesday, August 11th. Go to publicschoolstrong.org to learn more about that and get plugged in. A couple other events worth putting on your calendar. Tonight in Birmingham is the Alabama Organized Labor Awards Foundation banquet. So if you're interested in the area, you can check that out. Also want to mention, we talked about it at the start of the show, but August 25th is Election Day for the city of Huntsville. If you are in District 2, 3, or 4, you have city council and school board elections. So make sure you are registered to vote. The last day to update your registration for that election in Huntsville is August 10th. So check your registration as soon as you hear this. And a couple other dates. September 7th is Labor Day. There's going to be a couple of things happening across the state. I know the historic Labor Day parade in the Shoals area, as well as the big get-together at Tannehill Park. The day before, the 6th of September, that's Labor Sunday. And I'm really encouraging folks across the labor movement to participate with Labor in the Pulpit. This is a really easy way for us to bring the message of the labor movement directly to congregations, mosques, temples, religious institutions of any kind. And so Michael Spock is the lead on that at the AFL-CIO. He is regularly hosting workshops and Zoom meetings to help coach folks up. But if you're listening to this and you are a union member, or maybe you're a church member, and you're interested in Labor in the Pulpit, please do reach out. We'd love to partner with you. I want to see plenty of union speakers in congregations this Labor Day weekend, especially here in Alabama. I would love to put us on the map, so please do reach out for that. And last plug is that on September 11th, on a Friday, our Labor Council is partnering with Auburn University for the Advancing Alabama Labor History Symposium. Really, really excited about this. It is not too late to RSVP, but please go ahead and do that because seats are filling up fast. We have keynote speaker Dr. Robin D.G. Kelly, also a friend of the show. He is going to be our keynote. We're going to have folks from various archives and libraries. We're going to have emerging research around the labor movement here in the South, particularly in Alabama. So a great time, whether you're a history nerd or a union activist or just, interested in the background of this state and how regular working people have come together to try to make things better. That's September 11th in Auburn at the Auburn Center for Humanities, Advancing Alabama Labor History Symposium. So check that out.
All right. Every day across the South, workers are killed on the job, stolen from, discriminated against, or sexually harassed, and sometimes the employers are caught. These are last week's stories. This is Boss Watch. Over in Texas, the U.S. Department of Labor has recovered thousands in back wages and assessed penalties after a federal investigation revealed that child labor, minimum wage, and overtime violations were made by operators of 3 La Panaderia Bakery and Cafe locations in San Antonio. The department's Wage and Hour Division investigated the pay practices of Tequila Almond Croissant, Pan Dulce, and S.A. Bakery Company. All 3 do business as La Panaderia Bakery and Cafe in San Antonio, with locations across the city. Division investigators found the employers violated the child labor provisions of the Fair Labor Standards Act. Specifically, they employed a 13-year-old minor who was under the legal age for employment and permitted a 15-year-old to work overnight, which is prohibited for 14 and 15-year-olds. The division assessed a $25,000 civil money penalty for the child labor violations. In addition to that, though, the investigation also revealed minimum wage violations due to the employer's failure to pay one worker for 2 overnight shifts at the La Cantera Cafe location. The employers also failed to combine hours for employees who worked at multiple cafe locations and paid the employees straight time rates instead of the required time and a half overtime rates. We also had a story out of Alabama, right, Adam?
Oh, yeah. This is from WAFF 48 here in Huntsville. A class action lawsuit has been filed against Alabama A&M University, claiming the school failed to pay faculty members their summer compensation promised in their employment agreements, and that the missing payments also reduced their retirement contributions. The lawsuit was filed July 31st by former A&M Special Education Assistant Professor Adrian Christopher, who has worked at the university since 2018 and is also representing other faculty members who say they were not paid. It names the university's president, vice president for business and finance, and provost as defendants. Long story short, they claim the university's faculty handbook promised extra pay for faculty members who took on program coordinator roles during the summer. And they are alleging that they never got paid this money. So the lawsuit is, of course, asking for them to be paid any money owed, as well as for their retirement contributions to be made whole. And I wanted to highlight this story because I dealt with Alabama A&M as an employer a little bit in my experience working for AEA, and I'm just going to be real with y'all, and I'm sorry if this offends anyone, but I found them to be a lousy employer. The employees at Alabama A&M, aside from the handful of tenured professors, have no due process rights. None. They are totally at-will employees of the university, and it does not shock me at all to see this lawsuit, nor does it shock me to learn that this individual spent years trying to work through the bureaucracy to get it resolved without having to sue. And I think it's really, really important that folks who are in this area, who have some connection to the university, let people know about United Campus Workers. There is a union for college and university employees, including here in Alabama and throughout the South. United Campus Workers is building power at Jacksonville State, at UT in Knoxville and beyond. And it's really, I think, a great time for folks to organize at Alabama A&M and build union power, because that is the only way you're going to make progress and win the kind of conditions that you really deserve at that university, which is such a big employer in our community.
Yeah, absolutely. Big enough that they sponsored this radio station, actually, funny enough. So I'm sure Dale is going to love that. But I love it, so it's okay. All right, folks, that's going to be it for the first half of the program. Second half of the show, Find us on Facebook and YouTube to continue listening. If you want to call in, the phone number is 844-899-TVLR. That's 844-899-8857. We'd love to take your calls on any of the things that we've been talking about. We'll be talking to some letter carriers to get a debrief from their convention here momentarily, and then we'll take calls from letter carriers about their thoughts on that interview and the conversations and stuff like that. So make sure you find us Facebook, YouTube, The Valley Labor Report to continue listening. If you don't do that, though, we really appreciate your time, and we will see you next week. All right. We're off the radio now. Appreciate everybody tuning in. Got a great second half lined up for you. We'll be right back.
Come on, you poor workers, good news to you I'll tell. How the good old union has come in here to dwell.
This is George.
This is Overtime, a production of the Valley Labor Report, the largest union talk radio and online news outfit in the South, now broadcasting across the Mason-Dixon in Minneapolis and Chicago from the heart of the Tennessee Valley, the Spice Radio Studios in Huntsville, Alabama. We are run by working people and for working people. My name is Jacob Morrison. My co-host is Adam Keller. We appreciate you spending some time with us. The phone number is 844-899-TVLR. That is 844-899-8857. If you'd like to call in, you can also leave a voicemail at the same number when we're not live. You can text the number at any time or send us a note at tvlr.fm/contact. We'll soon be talking to some letter carriers to debrief the letter carriers convention. Looking forward to that. But first, I've got a clip that made the rounds, got in my algorithm from Joe Rogan's program. Let's listen to what he has to say about unions.
Get one shot at the union. Once you're in, you're in. Once you're out, you're out. That's it.
Yeah, and if you leave, boy, people will be mad at you because that is a good fucking job, and you get good benefits.
Yep.
You get like increased pay every year.
Dude, unions bring a lot of happiness and security.
Just really quickly on that, I wanted to, when I was talking, we had an interview with the APWU president at the AFL-CIO convention a couple of months ago, and I was talking to him off the air, and he said that that's happened to him a couple of times, that there's been people come out of the bargaining unit to go into management at the post office and want to come back, and he's like, no, you can't. We can't let you do that because I've got people now that have been in the bargaining unit for years looking to come up, and so, I can't let you come back and take their spot. Right? Because there's seniority and there, all this kind of stuff. And so, it's like, if you go into management, you're kind of choosing a side. And so that's a reason that people get upset about it, and people are not super likely to let you back in because the rest of the people that didn't, go into management, they've been waiting to move up. And so you would be taking one of their positions. And so, that's a big reason for, I think it's rational. Let's continue.
Definitely do.
The unions have got some problems, but they have to work out the problems because the business model of a union is solid.
Everything with people has problems.
Yeah.
Everything.
This is
and everything
exactly what we say all the time, and I really appreciate Joe saying this because, people, we like to point out, the statistics. People who work in unions, they make more money. They're more likely to have health care. They're more likely to have retirement. They're more likely to have a pension. They're less likely to die on the job. They have more of a voice on the job, et cetera, et cetera. And then somebody will come back to me with, well, they endorsed somebody that I don't like.
Or I was a member of such and such union and they weren't very good.
Exactly. Or look at this corruption thing that happened in this one union this one time. And, and it's literally exactly what Joe said. Unions are made up of people. You're not going to have an institution that is free from problems. That's just not the world that we're offered, right? We're not offered a world where, we even have the option of joining perfect institutions. Because they don't exist. They're not a thing that happens. And so we're faced with choices, right? Do we want this or that? And in the case of no union, well, look, I just listed off the myriad of problems with not having a union. And when you're not a member of a union, you're totally at the behest of corporations. And guess how many corporations have sexual harassment lawsuits? Guess how many corporations have corruption, bribing, et cetera, et cetera? Guess how many corporations donate and endorse politicians that you don't like? I mean, any problem that you can have with a union, multiply it by 10, 20, 30, 100, 1,000, and then you've got corporate America. Okay, so those are your choices, right? Be a complete servant to the corporation, or stand up for yourself and your sisters and brothers and join a movement that is imperfect, right? And Joe got that. I mean, that was perfect.
People can get into a position of power and control other people and decide what other people can and can't do. It's whoa.
Yeah.
And that's where unions are strong. I mean, it's you don't want just money running everything. Because eventually money's going to go, why are we paying you this much? We can pay you less.
Yeah.
You know what? If we just move our shit over to cross this river over here, we can get people to work for $1 an hour.
Mm-hmm.
Did you know that? Yeah. It would cost us this amount of money to move our plant over there, but we get these people over there to work. They work for almost nothing. And that's what's really happening right now.
Yeah.
It's because money became more important. It's like, is there enough money? Like, are you making enough money? If you're doing well, like if you're the head of a corporation, you're doing well, what is this constant need to make more money next year? You know how insane that is?
I know.
Let's pause on that for just a second, because it really is crazy. I mean, we were talking about this earlier in the program, but just for the clip, for people who don't know, because most people don't know. Most people, when we were covering the UAW's contract negotiations with the big three automakers, people heard these big numbers and people heard the companies crying poor, like this was going to cost them too much money. Well, ultimately, at GM, the delta between the status quo and the new contract, which increased wages, improved working conditions, etc., was like $8 billion. It was going to cost $8 or $9 billion for GM to pay for the improvements in the contract over the life of the contract, which was 5 years, right? Well, literally the month after the contract was ratified, literally the month after, GM spent $10 billion on stock buybacks. And since then, we're now 3 years out from the contract being ratified, GM has spent $20 or $30 billion more on stock buybacks and dividends and stuff like that to increase the wealth of the shareholders. And so, like, why, if you've got that much money laying around, why would you not invest it in the workers, invest it in new technology, invest it in, more plants, more production, or, this is a crazy thought, cut the costs of the vehicles that you're selling for the price of a small house, right? But they don't do that, and they won't, because they're not being brought to heel, and as long as they're not being brought to heel, they're going to want to keep making more and more and more and more money. It's never going to be enough for them. And so there's going to have to be some force that brings these companies to heel. And really, the labor movement is sort of the only thing that has that has the stuff to be able to do that. Labor movement and electing strong labor allies to take hold of the state. And so if you can do that, then you can start to rein in these companies and start to make sure that the profits that the workers are generating are actually distributed in a more fair way.
That's so insane that they always have to continue to make more money. And that's like the ethic of the corporation. That's the whole reason to have a corporation. Right. You have a duty to your shareholders. Yep. You're supposed to make more money.
And every quarter has to be more. There can't be a quarter where you go, hey, we're rebuilding. Yeah. It's like the fall, the winter, the spring, the seasons. No.
Fuck you, pay me.
Fuck you, pay me. Every quarter is a summer. There's no winter.
Yeah. No winter. Fuck you, pay me. Fuck you. Pay me. It's crazy that that's how medicine is run.
Yeah.
That's what sells medicine.
Right.
That's what sells everything. That's what sells cars. That's what's convincing you to get a new cell phone.
Yep. Well, there we go. We've reacted to a couple of bad Joe Rogan clips before, but this was a good one. Thank you, Joe. Appreciate it. Everybody who listened to that, you should do what Joe says and go join a union. It's like during the New Deal era, there were lots of posters that unions used that says your president wants you to join a union. Well, Joe's not the president, but he's like the podcast president or something. Joe Rogan wants you to join a union. So there you go. Cosign. We got one more story real quick. This one in Chicago. So WCPT listeners, listen up, perk up. This is for you in particular. Workers on the sets of Chicago Fire and Chicago Med are being retaliated against for unionizing. Those workers are production assistants, PAs. PAs are some of the lowest paid workers in the movie industry, and actually historically they've apparently not been unionized. And well, LIUNA in Chicago has the workers there have decided that they want to unionize. They went to LIUNA. LIUNA has organized them, and they successfully organized last year. They just ratified their first contract last month, and now the production company and NBC Universal is cutting their wages. Or not cutting their wages, but cutting their hours. Because previously, they were working something like 6/12s, and now a lot of them are seeing those days cut to like 8 hours. They're not working as many days. And the union, the Labor's International Union of North America, LIUNA, said that the elimination of those hours have resulted for some in a 43% reduction in their typical weekly take-home pay. At an hourly wage of $19.93 an hour, many of those workers now face serious financial hardship. Where they were able to get by, if you're working, if you're making like $20 an hour and you're working like 60 hours a week, you can kind of get by. But if you're only working 30 or 40, then that makes it really difficult in a city like Chicago. And so the union claims those reductions are retaliation. Their response to the organization. They're not like what the contract says to do. It's the management is trying to punish these workers for standing up for themselves. And so the union is calling on NBC Universal to reverse this decision. And they're planning to file an unfair labor practice charge and a grievance with the contract. And so folks in Chicago, you should definitely reach out to the Chicago Labor Federation, LIUNA, to see if there's any way that you can support. Just terrible need. I mean, a 43% reduction in weekly take-home pay is just an awful, awful situation. All right. So last week was the national convention for the National Association of Letter Carriers. They are a union representing some 200,000 city carriers across the country. And we have a lot of letter carriers that listen to the program, so we thought it would be good to get on some folks who were at the convention to give us a debrief and help us figure out kind of what is going to happen next for the union. So we have on the line Margot O'Neill, a member of the branch 352 in Iowa, Greg Samoluk, president of branch 334 in Framingham, Massachusetts, and Derek Lehman, a member of branch 34 in Boston, Massachusetts. Derek, Greg, Margot, welcome to the Valley Labor Report.
Thanks, Jacob.
Happy to be here.
Really appreciate you taking the time. And I was just told Margot's not here. Presumably she'll be joining momentarily, or maybe in the email I misread and she just wasn't going to be able to make it. But anyway, we'll go ahead and start. The convention just wrapped up, and before we get into like debrief of the convention, I wanted to talk about some of the context going into the convention, because I would imagine that a big thing hanging over the convention is that y'all are now once again working under an expired contract, and you have been for a couple of months now. So, Derek, can you talk a little bit about what that means for carriers and how they're responding to it?
Yeah, I mean, there's not a lot of trust in us being able to get a contract quickly. I think the plan is for it to go to arbitration much faster than last time. But with how long it took to get our last contract, with how bad it was, and how bad the final contract we ended up getting through what was probably a stipulated award after the membership voted down the tentative agreement for the second time only in our union's history. I think this contract is probably going to be another business as usual contract, and we'll see how the membership responds to it.
Greg, what about you? How are carriers in Framingham reacting to working under an expired contract?
Well, they're going to kill me. I have to say it's Framingham, but that's okay.
Oh, okay.
No, I think it's business as usual. I've been around for 23 years, and Derek's only been around for a couple. But back when the contract used to expire, when I was coming up, it always takes this long. It always takes this long, but it never took the 700 days that it took. And I think the rank and file carriers, it's unfortunate. I think they've become, oh, we're going to get another bad contract. It's going to go to arbitration. Last time we had to wait for the arbitrator to get back from his European vacation. And then it came in, and I'm sure you remember, it came in, Derek, we were at a rally in March. And Derek and I both spoke at a rally, and the membership all over the country, we had rallies, and the membership was really inspired. And then to go back to work 2 days later and find out that it was a stipulated award, it really deflated the membership. But I will say, at least my carriers, and we were at the convention this week, and I'll tell you, the spirit of these carriers is unbelievable. When you come together, you appreciate it. But unfortunately, I think we're just going to get another basic contract. You see the Postmaster General in front of Congress crying poor mouth. We'll probably get the same old contract, unfortunately.
One of the things that I think is important for people to recognize about, working under an expired agreement is that you're missing out on COLA, right? Because even when you go back and you get you get an agreement once it's been ratified, and you go back and you get the back pay for the general wage increases, but I don't think you don't get back COLA, do you?
No, you missed out on the COLA.
Yeah, and so go ahead.
Sorry. No,
Okay,
I was saying you do miss out on the COLA, and I called into your show last year at around this time, and when we were going through the contract, and I think I talked about the diet COLA and I explained it that Derek, I'm going to guess Derek is step C on the old table 2, and he put, oh wow, that was a good guess, and Derek gets about 65% of the COLA that I get, and as someone that's at top step, I don't think that's right. I think Derek should get 100%. I think we should all be equal. And now they would argue now we're all on the same table, but we moved into the lower table. So because there's not that many old carriers left like myself.
Right. Yeah, that's not good to say we eliminated tiers. Everybody's in the second tier. That's usually not what people mean when they say we want to eliminate tiers. I would imagine, my guess is that this state of affairs, working under an expired contract again, is and sort of the lackluster nature of the previous contract is a big reason that Renfro has decided not to seek re-election as national president. Greg, what do you make of that news?
I think Brian lost the membership. He went in when he got elected. He was Fred Rolando, our old president, who I liked a lot. He was the heir apparent. Brian stepped up, and there was a lot of momentum when he came in. And so, people have personal issues. I think Brian had personal issues that we all understood. We all wished him the best, but he just lost the membership. That contract. The longer it went, he lost us. I don't think he was transparent enough. I've told him, have a semi-personal relationship with him. We've told him in president's meetings, you should talk more to branch presidents. We're on the floor. But I think the contract was the biggest thing. And what it did was it allowed these other reform movements, like Derek's a part of BFN, and it allowed the CLC. It allowed even his own, we'll call the establishment, to form their own slate without him on it. For the first time in my career, we're going to have a multiple seat election on almost every race. I think there's business agents down in where you guys are in Region 8, Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, Tennessee, where there's 3 viable candidates running for one of the 29 national positions. So
wow.
Yeah, and the NALC has always structurally been a very powerful presidential union. That's been the case since Sombrado really transformed this union after the 1970 strike. And Renfro was essentially anointed to be the next president by Rolando, the outgoing NALC president. And it was not really until the last couple months that it was clear that the people behind Renfro were able to push him out in order to preserve um, their ability to run for business agents' offices down ballot. Um, Him not running was not by any means inevitable, and I think it came pretty late. It was only announced at the start of the convention, which was probably the most unanimous that crowd in the convention hall was all week.
Wow. So now there are 4 candidates for election for president. I mean, Greg, you mentioned that there are 3 candidates for business agent in Region 8, and I'm sure that we're going to talk to some of those candidates over the course of the election. But what do you make of the state of the presidential election at this point? We can start with you, Derek.
Yeah, I mean, I think coming out of this weekend, my read of the convention is that Ryan is probably the front runner. She is the successor to Renfro, but is well known, well respected throughout the union as being competent and even-handed. I think she was the right pick for the establishment to make to replace him. I personally am supporting Cariff for president. I think that he is going to be, a leader who is able to take the fight to Congress and take to the fight on contracts in ways that we haven't seen before. There's also Henry, who is the presidential candidate for the CLC, which is a larger anti-establishment slate of a number of branch presidents and many veteran union members. And then there's also Lou Drass, who threw his name in the ring just recently.
Greg, what are some of the, Derek mentioned that kind of Ryan is seen as sort of the Renfro successor. You also mentioned that he thinks that she's sort of the front runner, and then then you've got Cariff and Henry are sort of running in an anti-establishment lane, and then Drass is sounds like we're not exactly sure what sort of lane he's trying to run in. I mean, where do you put these people, Greg?
For someone that's a political junkie like me, I got very excited when I saw I wanted there to be 5 candidates because I may or may not have been a part of a failed ranked choice voting amendment. But Nicole, I've dealt with her. Nicole Ryan, I've dealt with her. She's an amazing. When I say amazing, Secretary Treasurer of the NALC for years. The question is, does that translate into being an amazing national president? James Henry has been vice president, been an arbitration person, teaches formal and beyond arbitration. Everybody says he's amazing. He's been around for a while. He's decided to run with the CLC. His powers were stripped of him by Brian. So he had a lot of time on his hands to run with the CLC, to go around the country with his EVP, Corey Walton, who I know you know, to campaign. And they put on a hell of a campaign. They are out there. And Mike Cariff, Cariff, I'll call him the wild card. NBA Region 3, gallivants throughout the country. He's coming to my meeting in a month. Got a lot of energy. I would say more of the people's candidate. I think Derek would agree with that. Like, social media game is strong. And Lou Dross, surprisingly, we had heard rumors, James Capone and I, my co-hosts on the President's Roundtable, we had heard rumors for a while that he'd been coming back, and he found us on Sunday and said, "Oh, I want to get on with you guys." So he's been doing some research. He was a legend. He wrote a lot of our contract manuals, or at least Defense to Discipline, I believe. He was seen as, back in about 2012, 2016, as the next president. Unfortunately had his wife got sick and he had to leave. He's back now. Can he come back after being gone for 4 years and make a difference? I don't know. But I just want to add before we go back, the thing that we'll miss about Brian, and Brian has his faults, but what we saw this week, Derek, and I think Derek would agree, and it's a small thing, but Brian runs a hell of a convention. But also the biggest thing we'll miss is Brian's connections on Capitol Hill and with other union leaders. If he could just be the political liaison for us, I'm not saying that's what I want him to do, but if that's what his job was before, instead of being president, that would have been great, because he has a lot of relationships on Capitol Hill. You see how he is very close with Hakeem Jeffries, probably the next Speaker of the House. He's very close with Sarah Nelson and Liz Schuler, two of our great labor leaders in this country. And I hope that does not affect the future of the NALC, losing those relationships. I don't think it will, but it is something to keep an eye on.
So there are 4 candidates, and you mentioned ranked choice voting. That was voted down. There was an amendment to put it up to make the voting for president ranked choice, and that was ultimately voted down. And you can talk a little bit about the debate for that if you want. I always find people who say that I think it's frankly a little insulting when people say ranked choice is too complicated. It's literally, it's like you rank your choice. It's literally in the freaking, who do you want the most, and then the second most, and then the third most, and then, if your first most candidate isn't chosen, then your vote goes towards your second candidate. I don't understand, I think the people who either pretend they don't understand it or pretend that the rank and file won't understand it, I think it's really insulting, but that was voted down at convention. There's no ranked choice voting. And so is there a runoff if no candidate hits 50%, or is it just the person with the most votes in the first round wins?
The person with the most votes is going to win, and they are, I would guess, Derek, I'd love your opinion on this, 35%.
There's no way. There's no way any candidate wins with more than 50%. Not in this election.
Wow.
Yeah, the main arguments against ranked choice voting that we heard on the microphones, frankly, misunderstood some of the basics of it. It was very frustrating to hear somebody say, "What happens if somebody gets ranked more than 50% of the votes? The election's over, man. You won." Yeah, what's up, Greg?
No, I will add that person that went up and said that is one of the chair people of the CLC, and he's one of the smartest people in our union, and he knew the answer to that question. I think he was muddying the waters there by saying, well, what happens if they get 51%? Well, I know for a fact that he is one of the smartest people in the union. I don't agree with him on a lot of things. He accused one of the candidates of using dirty politics because one of the presidential candidates was wearing their own pin and another candidate's pin, and he was accused of dirty politics at the mic. I may or may not have went to the mic and said, I'll wear as many pins as I want to wear. I think the debate was spirited. It was Derek, correct me if I'm wrong, it was the longest debate on the amendments. It got called, a question got called, which is that person's right to call the question. We had some great representatives talk about it. Chris P., one of our co-hosts on Next Gen, Melissa Rakestraw from Illinois, and Ray Tillman from Colorado, and myself. I won't say I did a hell of a job, but they did a hell of a job. And I will say Melissa really compared it to bidding a route, which everybody in that room could have related to, because you picked, when you're bidding a route, you say, I like this route first, I like this route second, and this route third. And it's not that hard, but I think you're right. I think they like to overcomplicate it. But as we had Greg Dennis on from the person that runs the Massachusetts ranked choice voting, and he said regular elections are complicated. Look at Florida in the year 2000 presidential election. But I'll just say this: if New York City can do ranked choice voting for the mayoral race, the NALC can do it.
Well, and it's just, I think the simplest way that I think about it is it's just doing an automatic runoff. Right? I mean, we all understand runoff elections. That happens all the time. If no candidate hits 50%, then you have an election with the top two. Well, that's literally all that ranked choice voting is. It's just automatic runoff, and you don't have to spend the cost of doing a runoff election. You get people's opinion if it was a runoff. I don't know. I think the people who are making it complicated are being a little bit disingenuous, a lot of them.
The concern about cross endorsements also, I do want to address this because we care about union democracy a lot. These questions about people's preference for other candidates and cross endorsement, that is how you put together a slate. But that happens all in private conversations between different union leaders. When you have ranked choice voting and you have these competitive elections, suddenly it is the rank and file each making their own judgment of, I like this person, but I like this person. How are we gonna, how am I going to put together the slate that is going to run my union? And on the convention floor, we got over a quarter of the votes were pro. I think we got around like 33%. And that was against both the establishment's recommendation and the CLC's recommendation.
That's
Those
surprising
were
that the concerned
pro-reform
letter
voters who
carriers.
were not affiliated with any one slate.
Yeah, that's
And I'll-
surprising that
I'll
the
just-
concerned
can I
letter
just add
carriers
something to
would
that?
would be opposed to it. I don't understand that.
I think the makers of the amendment, we have to self-reflect as well, and nobody's perfect. I think we didn't help by, Derek, and you can criticize us for this. We had too many amendments. We should have passed one solid amendment. There was 12 of them because they had to get broken down. My amendment got broken down into 3 different amendments, so I had to withdraw. I think we added to the complication. I'm not saying that's why it lost, but I think next time we will, because it will happen again. I think we have a better opportunity in Minnesota in 2 years to do it. I think we're going to write a better, solid amendment to this.
Well, and I think that I think presumably, when it sounds like the next president is selected without a majority of the vote, I think that will sort of demonstrate the need and the value of ranked choice automatic runoff voting, and so it might kind of go down easier in the 2030 convention. And so we're moving into now some of the debrief from the convention. I think that was a pretty big amendment that was debated and voted on at convention. Another one was locality pay being approved for the first time. Locality pay is the way that the rest of the federal government pays its people. They have a base salary, and then there are cost of living adjustments based on, the cost of living in your area. And so this is something that the NALC has voted down at convention after convention after convention, and it was finally approved this year. We'll start with you, Greg. Why did delegates support locality pay this time?
I think being in LA was a big factor. It tried in Boston. Boston was crazy because we had a lot of issues with Renfro and charges against him. I think it was written by Derek's brother in Branch 34, Bobby DeMotton. This has been his passion project for over a decade. I think it passed because people are hurting. Table 2 people, like I call them, they're still hurting in these areas, and I think some of the people that used to vote it down from where you guys are down south to the Midwest, I think they might have realized that our brothers and sisters are hurting in these high-end areas. There's people that you cannot live in San Francisco and deliver mail in San Francisco. They're never going to be able to buy a house in Boston, outside of Boston, and they need a little bit of help. They have it in Hawaii, they have it in Alaska. It works. Unfortunately, it's just becoming our bargaining position. I don't think the post office is going to say, oh, okay, here you go. But I think the momentum was there over the years. I think some of the people that used to be against it maybe have retired and moved on because there was spirited debates. I was in Detroit and Chicago in 2018, 2022, and people from down south were like, we're one union, we make the same thing. I think the arguments just got better for it. So that's my opinion on it.
One of the things that I think, in particular, like with a government agency, a public service, is that when you're, in the UAW or you're bargaining with with private companies, if there's like kind of locality adjustments, then you might could get the impression that maybe the money that's not going to people in lower cost of living states is going to like a shareholder or something, making a rich person richer. But the Postal Service being a public service, in my opinion, and this is why I support it in the rest of the federal government. I mean, I am an AFGE member, and so I've dealt with locality pay. We're not making a profit, right? I mean, that's not the goal of the Postal Service. That's not the goal of the federal government, is to make a profit. We have to, make the government work. We have to make the Postal Service work. And so it makes sense to pay people, kind of similarly in different areas, so that you could have the same standard of living in Alabama as you would in New York on the same job, right? And so that is going to mean paying a letter carrier in Alabama less than a letter carrier in New York, because you want them to have a similar standard of living. And that's kind of one of the reasons that I support it more so in like a public setting than I might would be open to arguments against in like a private setting.
Yeah, the other
go ahead.
fact is that, for the last 2 decades, we have been getting contracts that barely or obviously don't keep up with inflation. And that has affected our high costs of living areas the most. We used to deliver really the best standard of living for a job you could get without even a high school education for some people. And now seeing that, we have brothers and sisters who are homeless, who are barely making ends meet in major cities. There was a BFN member who was in San Francisco and had to quit and find another job because he couldn't survive being a new hire letter carrier. And I think the focus on doing it legislatively, because the locality pay resolution that was passed was for us to not bargain for it with the post office, but to lobby for it through Congress. And this has been the focus of the NALC for the last 2 decades, is legislative lobbying, working collaboratively with both Democrats and Republicans to protect the Postal Service and get in reforms when we can. That was how we, after nearly 15 years, repealed the Postal Accountability Act that had the disastrous pre-funding mandate. And it's very clear that there's more legislative action that's need to be done to restructure the Postal Service, to make it work for workers and to make it deliver high quality service. And yeah, I think we as our union need to be preparing to take bold actions and put together a real bold plan that puts workers first in making a new post office. The way that, workers were put first when we remade the post office after the 1970 strike.
Right. So something else that I think passed at convention, I'm not totally sure, and so I'll go to y'all for the explanation of it, but I think that there's now going to be more participation from the executive council in bargaining. Do I have that right, Greg?
Yeah, I think, Derek, I was actually doing a podcast interview during that part of the convention. But Derek, I think you were there for that. But I will say, yeah, they want more participation because of what happened with Brian when Brian was incapacitated, and our old president Fred had to come back and take over the negotiations. But Brian tends to do it alone, and people will tell me he doesn't do it alone, but he doesn't use his top people. He uses the people that he wants in the room, and I think you want to have the EVP, the VP. I wouldn't necessarily have the city delivery person in there. I would probably have those three. I wouldn't have safety and health when it comes down to the money part. But there is going to be more participation. I know there will be, based on that Brian's not running, because I know for a fact when James Henry goes to negotiate, I believe Corey Walton will be in that room with him. And if Nicole Ryan goes and negotiates, I believe Manny Peralta will be in that room. And I believe Cariff will, because Cariff's been calling for this, I believe that he will have all the E-board get on board, because he'll sound very hypocritical if he doesn't. So, right. Derek, if he is.
Yeah. The actual structural changes that would have put some or all of the executive council in the position as chief bargainer were all voted down pretty narrowly, but they were all defeated. And it's clear that the establishment of the union still believes in the structure of having the sole negotiator be the president, him calling the shots. But what was passed were some essentially guardrails on that. I've got my book right here. The first one was a requirement to fulfill any vacancy in the office of the president within 45 days. This was needed when we had no bargaining. We had no chief bargainer for months at a time. Back in, I believe it was 2024. Is that right, Greg?
2023. Early
2023.
20, yeah.
And the other one that passed was that the president needs to be able to keep a written record of all the collective bargaining proposals. Because when Renfro had to take medical leave unexpectedly, he also didn't leave any records of what bargaining had been made, what proposals had been proposed and accepted or modified. And so there was a whole new team of the executive vice president and the former national president that came in and did some work bargaining. And then when Renfro returned, we went back and did more bargaining. And so the things that were passed created some requirements for continuity of bargaining if there's ever an issue with the president. I think the convention overwhelmingly was in support of putting clear guardrails on the presidential bargaining, but there were multiple proposals for putting the executive council in the driver's seat, and they all narrowly failed.
What were the arguments against the executive council being the driver over the single president?
That the president's our chief negotiator, and any other people being in the room would hamstring him, or there would be too many voices to be able to put a clear argument forward to management. I think this also goes back to labor management cooperation. If you have one guy up there, he is able to figure out what he thinks is the best deal for his members and shake their hand and put that forward clearly as the union's position. If there's a larger executive council, you will have dissent of, I think we might be able to get more. I think we're asking for too much. And that's a level of division that I think the establishment in our union is just not prepared to handle. And so they wanted to keep it with just the president.
Were there any other, I think at the last convention, I think I remember some resolutions about open bargaining. Can you remind us what those resolutions were trying to do, and were there any other open bargaining resolutions or amendments put forward this time?
Well, I think what they were trying to do is, because we were getting no updates last time until we forced him to give us updates, and it was like the way late in the game. We would get on the members only portal. We got hour long updates of little things in the contract that I think Brian was going through the motions of just saying, okay, Article 8, they're going to do that. And I think he was just doing it because he was told to do it. I'll just say, even, and before Derek gets into this convention, even at this convention, we just got this is a big contract for a lot of people, because we feel like we've only been in it for a couple months and it already expired, but it was just like, oh, it's going to arbitration, and we'll get to it when we get to it. Like, I don't even think Brian's gonna be a part of he's not a part of the arbitration anyways. He's just a witness, but he might not even be president when this thing comes out. I believe, I would guess early next year we'll see the contract. So it wasn't a big of a topic, this convention, I'll say that. Because I don't think anybody thinks he's ever going to do it properly, in my opinion.
The last amendment that I had that I wanted to discuss with y'all, and y'all can let me know if I'm missing anything that you think is really important, is the one about the right to strike. There was a resolution or amendment put up to not have the NALC strike or anything like that, or even prepare for a strike, but it was just to advocate for the right to strike. Derek, can you talk to us a little bit about the reasoning for the resolution and how that went?
Yeah, I think the most obvious reason to advocate for the right to strike is that we have been getting bad contracts for years and years and years. And people are realizing that, we really don't have a ton of leverage over our boss. We spend a lot of time on Capitol Hill negotiating to protect our boss, to protect the Postal Service. And it doesn't leave us a lot of power on the workroom floor to negotiate come collective bargaining season. The contract campaign that the NALC ran was was largely decentralized. It was not a, structured, centralized, and fighting contract campaign, because we know that it's the president and the postmaster and probably an arbitrator who are going to write our contract. The right to strike resolution failed. It failed by a pretty significant margin, but I think it's important that we continue to speak about the right to strike. It's something that our union has advocated for in the past. We're, of course, federal workers. We are not legally allowed to strike, but we are legally allowed to advocate to gain that right. And I think there is a growing consensus within the union that, we need to be able to we need to gain more leverage over management. And we have a large political weight that we can throw around. And if we decide to lobby to gain the right to strike alongside a mass membership campaign to do so, I mean, Hakeem Jeffries came to our national convention. When we go all out for a proposal, we can deliver. And it wouldn't even just have to be us. We're the largest federal worker union, but it would need to be a nationwide repeal on the ban for striking.
Greg, what did you make of the debate around the right to strike and the result?
I'll say this: Tyler Vassar presents a good case. He walked up to me, went to hand me a pin, and he goes, "I think I know your feelings on this." And we had a spirited debate. I think I know the membership, being a branch president and a vice president for over a decade. We're not there. We are not there yet. We can get there. It's going to change, and it's starting to change. The more members are getting involved. As I said to Tyler, we need to focus more on unionizing other delivery companies like FedEx and Amazon. We're not going to form a labor party overnight, but as you said in the segment earlier, when Derek and I were on hold, start getting more labor candidates. Then you might start to talk about that. The problem with the post office and the NALC striking right now, and the difference between 1970 is the post office was kind of the only game around back then. And what we're seeing now on the floor is mail's not getting delivered in some places. And unfortunately, I think if we did, and I don't think I think we just want the right, and I'll say that. Unfortunately, if we did, I think we'd be forgotten because I think Amazon and Elon Musk type people would just swoop right in. And as much as our customers love us, they love getting their packages from us more than they love us. So as soon as those packages are delayed, we might lose a little bit of that faith that the public has in us. But I'll say Tyler and the BFN crew, they have an opportunity because the next convention is in their backyard. And they did take a teller vote. And I think what I saw was they took a teller vote. They knew they lost. But I think Tyler wanted to go up there because in the teller vote, you get to go, you do a division, then you do a teller vote, and you get to hear the actual number. But I think he wanted to see, and BFN wanted to see how much work they have to do. And I'll tell them, they got some work to do.
We got some big work ahead of us.
Derek's got some work. Derek's going to work tomorrow to do this. But they got some work to do. And I can be persuaded. But they have to persuade people like me in a different way because as I tell them when we all label each other in our political labels, I say I'm the worst kind of label. I'm a Democrat. You got to start getting people like me because these guys we have someone like Hakeem Jeffries come to our convention. That's going to be the third most powerful person in the country in a couple months. As much as a lot of the people in that arena don't like him for his votes on AIPAC or Iran or whatever. You got to play the game with people like that. You got to shake the hands. You got to clap for them. You got to stand for them because Unfortunately, the shirt that I'm wearing is a letter carrier political fund, and Derek said we fight for the postal service. We do, because you're not going to strike if the postal service isn't around, right? So we got to make sure the postal service is around, and then we can talk about the right to strike, in my opinion.
Right. Well, Greg, you mentioned there, and then, we'll talk about anything else that I may have missed, but you mentioned there, the importance of organizing FedEx and Amazon and, XPO and these other logistics companies. Were there any amendments or resolutions on the floor of the convention to divert any resources from the NALC into those projects?
Yeah, there was one on organizing Amazon. The executive council initially disapproved of it, but with a pretty minor amendment, reapproved it. It's a commitment that we've made at previous conventions. It's something that we have committed some nominal resources to as part of the larger AFL-CIO project of organizing Amazon. But I remain unconvinced that it really is a priority for our union. This Amazon is eating our lunch right now. In 2020, a majority of packages that were delivered in the US were delivered by a union worker, either in USPS or UPS. Now it's a majority non-union. Parcel delivery is becoming a non-union profession in a way that it was not a decade ago. And unless we're able to beat Amazon and organize it, organize the millions of workers that make it happen, we're going to have our lunch eaten. I mean, Amazon, it doesn't pay taxes because it reinvests all of its earned income in new capital equipment. They are building a world-class, state-of-the-art package delivery system. They are expanding into more rural areas. They really are playing a game to destroy the post office. Amazon is an existential threat to us. And they have kept us around for as long as they have because they've made money off of us. But I think, especially in the Trump era, we could easily see a power play being made for privatization or something like that. Because we are, Amazon is our largest contractor. They pay us billions of dollars to deliver an enormous amount of packages. And that gives them leverage over us. If they believe that they have the network to deliver it all themselves or deliver it alongside FedEx, they could crush us, or at least threaten to.
Greg, do you have any other comments about the resolution to organize Amazon?
Yeah, I mean, like Derek just said, Amazon is becoming the go-to. It's sad to see because Amazon delivers more packages than us. Just by a small percentage, they deliver more packages than us now. But like Derek said, there's no motivation, and I don't know if it's because they make a lot of money from the e-board to really get involved in stuff like this, really organize. We have the political fund, but we don't seem to go out and organize even amongst our own members. Like, it takes a small group that caught some attention, like Derek was a part of. They did Amazon Sundays, and not at Amazon, they did it at the postal facilities or off the postal facilities, organizing, telling young postal workers while they're delivering for Amazon, who probably used to work at Amazon, their rights. Again, we need to get better. We need to write more resolutions, even if it takes a few conventions to pass organizing these other companies, because they're just going to eat our lunch, like Derek said earlier. They're just we deliver packages for UPS more and more every day. We lost the contract, we got it back. It's just amazing that the post office is just it's the last mile, and the service doesn't take advantage of that. They put out a bidding process. A lot of companies bid because we are cheaper, and I don't think the post office sells their service enough to the public.
All right.
Yeah,
well,
I mean, the post office is both too undercapitalized. We don't have state-of-the-art technology in the sorting machines, in the distribution system, in our facilities, or our vehicles. not at the scale that the other parcel companies do. We're undercapitalized to be a competitive business in even the like short term with our operating deficits. And we're too underfunded to provide a service. And we one thing that I really came away from one of these talks by the lead researcher from the NALC was that, we need to be diversifying the service and making it something that is delivering for the American people, more than just being another package company.
Yeah, absolutely. Greg and Derek, is there anything else that important that happened at the convention that we haven't talked about today?
Derek?
Yeah, I mean, I've only been to two conventions. I was a sergeant at arms at the Boston convention. And even just between those two, I noticed how much younger the room seemed to be from last time. It was a great weekend for young guys in their mid 40s. There's a new generation coming up in the NALC in our union.
Yeah, I've noticed it was I think it was the largest convention. I think they expected 6,000 originally. I think there was over 9,000 there, and
Wow.
I saw a lot of new. Yeah, I think that room was as big as I've seen. Definitely bigger than Boston. Definitely bigger than Chicago. Chicago's weird post COVID, but Detroit was very big. But that was a big convention hall. I mean, Derek and I were all the way in the back, and we couldn't see. Renfro looked like a ant to us from back
Jeez,
there.
I mean,
but
9,000 people. That's like what? Like 5% of all letter carriers.
It's amazing. I don't know who was delivering mail all week, but
yeah, I know that's crazy.
Yeah, a lot of overtime in my office last week. But what I've noticed, and it's like there's been a change because, and I'll give podcasts a lot of credit, not just because I'm on one, and social media. It's like these podcasters walk around like celebrities. And people listen. You'd think listening to podcasts about delivering mail isn't fun, but there's this movement going on, and it's going to take a little while. But I saw a lot of energy in that room. I'll say this: there's a lot of social media anti-Renfro. We're going to do this. It was very respectful. The thing with this union is we all want the same thing. We just have different ways of getting there. And I'm always very proud when I leave that week. You get to bond with your different parts of the country, all the different accents. You can hear it out of my voice right now compared to yours, obviously. But there's definitely momentum, and people think the labor movement's not going to be around. No, I think the labor movement's going to get strong, especially with this administration right now. People are starting to realize this has been an utter failure. And with the Postal Service, he's got other issues. So I think he's leaving the Postal Service around. And we see in the news with the Postmaster General and, someone who I'm not a fan of, Josh Hawley, going after him about his bonuses. But I would say to Josh Hawley, put your money where your mouth is and sign the Anti-Privatization Act, sign the Protect Our Letter Carriers Act. If you're going to go after the Postmaster General, we got some other ideas for you and your buddy Rand Paul to keep going, because we'll support you. We have the political fund. We'll give you some money if you support us. And I do think that's another big part of the convention is the letter carrier political fund. I worked the booth. A lot of people signed up. A lot of momentum there for the political fund. So I think the NALC is on the right track right now. We're going to have, I bet we have more votes in this election coming up than in my whole career. So.
All right. Well, y'all, I really appreciate your time. Greg Samaluk is president of Branch 334 in Framingham, Massachusetts, and Derek is a member of Branch 34 in Boston. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Happy to be on.
844-899-TVLR is the phone number, 844-899-8857 if you'd like to call in. If you're a letter carrier, would love to hear any of your thoughts from the convention, if you were there or if you were not. And if you don't call in live, you can leave us a voicemail and we'll check it out at the next program, 844-899-TVLR. That is 844-899-8857. Adam, did you have any takeaways?
Well, I'm really proud to hear that last little bit about the State of the Union and the Democratic participation. As we've been talking about today throughout the show, we need younger folks running for positions. And I don't say that as any disrespect to our older comrades, but, it's important to keep the leadership pipeline intact. And I've seen a lot of institutions where you didn't build the bench, right? You didn't build up the next generation of leaders. And as those folks decline or fade away, you're stuck in a crisis. And so I think that's exciting for me to hear the participation and the engagement. I think anyone who's listening who has the opportunity, you should run for these positions. Go to your convention for your national union. Go to the state federation convention. Go to your local labor council. Participate as much as you can in the labor movement and bring more people in with you. I get it. There's a lot of meetings. There's a lot of responsibilities, but the more of us that can get engaged with it, because unions are only as strong as the membership, and it's only as strong as the engagement from the membership. These are democratic organizations, and ultimately it takes our participation to make them effective, right? You don't buy a membership at the gym and get more fit. You have to put in the work. You have to show up to the gym and sweat and work out and actually gain results that way. And unions operate in a very similar manner. So shout out to all the letter carriers who've been getting engaged, getting involved. And credit to those who've been engaging on social media and using podcasts and other, YouTube, and using these platforms to spread the word and engage with folks because it does give you a whole new opportunity to hear from and talk to your rank and file members from across the country in a way that, maybe we didn't have a generation ago. So, as much as social media and media generally can be a bad thing, it can be a tool that we can use for our advantage. So, yeah, I appreciate the brothers coming on today. All the letter carriers who've been engaged with our program. We are not letter carriers. We're just union brothers who want to see our postal service defended. We want to see it be better than ever. And we want to see letter carriers and all postal workers and all workers have a better life and the dignity they deserve. And it's going to take working people getting involved to make that happen. So, yeah, credit to all those who went out to the convention. You took time away from your life, your family to do that. It's a big deal, and appreciate your participation. Democracy's messy, but we've got to engage in it.
We got a caller from a 617 area code. Let's go ahead and bring them on the air. 617 area code. What's your name and where are you calling from?
Hey, this is John Murphy. I'm a city letter carrier down here in Naples, Florida, branch 4716. I'm currently on the way back from the 2026 NALC convention. I'm in Kansas at the airport waiting for my flight back to Fort Myers. I'm calling in regards to the next generation of carriers stepping up. Derek was just talking about how this convention had a lot of new faces, right? New energy. Mm-hmm. The old timers also were talking about how this was one of the most historic conventions with the most achievements accomplished, right, for the reform movement. We got live streaming officially accomplished. We got TCOLA as official legislation bargaining. We got the contract negotiations somewhat more principled and transparent. But I think one of the biggest things that people need to realize is the labor movement right now is in a downward spiral. And as Greg was saying, we have the chance to rebuild it. We had Sarah Nelson there give a fiery speech, getting the crowd fired up. And it's good. But a lot of the convention delegates weren't actually at the convention, right? You got one delegate for every 20 city carriers in your branch, I believe. And going forward, the next convention is in Minneapolis. So it's a cheaper area to travel to because Boston was 2 years ago. Now it was a high cost area. Los Angeles is another high cost area. So if any of the city carriers are listening and you don't know if you can get involved, you can. I am just a rank and file member. I got hired in 2021. I'm not a steward. I'm not any leadership role. I do a podcast, Next Generation Carriers, and I've had state presidents from Vermont, Michigan, North Carolina, South Carolina, Virginia of the NELC, shaking my hand for everything I've done. And I'm like, yo, I'm just like you guys. And there was another rank and file member on Tuesday making me sign his convention booklet. And I was like, yo, that's crazy. So if you're a city carrier that is just in, please look into getting involved and meeting us and being part of the convention in Minneapolis in 2 years. Please read your branch bylaws on how to get active and become a delegate, because I think that's the most important thing. So I just want to say that moving forward, please start reading your branch bylaws and get out to Minneapolis and start owning your union.
All right. John, thanks for the call. I appreciate it. All right. Well, Adam, we have another call. This one from a 954 area code. 954 area code. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hi, my name is Steve Moline, and I'm calling from the Seattle SeaTac Airport. I just landed and, started listening to your episode, realized you're talking about us. I'm a letter carrier out of Seattle. I guess I just wanted to say, in my analysis, a lot of the things that happened, why it was so weird, it's based on the idea that, Renfro kind of broke the union, and business as normal is kind of over for a while. Until that can be restored. Then we were not able to get all the business accomplished that we were supposed to even. We had resolutions that went basically fallow because we were not able to trust each other enough to get the work done that was needed to get done. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Not to blame it on one guy, but all the things that the establishment was supposed to be doing, they were unable to do. And that's, in my opinion, how TVLR got passed, right? So that's locality pay, right?
Right.
That I had old people coming up to me telling me that they were trying to get locality pay in the 80s, that they had a 30-year career in which they tried to do it. Well, Renfro broke the union enough that that was able to happen. But he also broke the union enough that there was a discussion about whether or not the tellers could be trusted. He broke the union enough that there were 30 people who ran for AFL-CIO delegate. It's when there's only 7 positions in it, they're usually a non-competitive race. The union is weirdly broken in ways just because he's unable to do the thing that Rolando and Sombrado were able to do, which is, old class, Hoffa-style unionism. Not that that's a good thing. Obviously, I'm against that. But those are the kinds of failures that they're having, in my opinion, that allowed this convention to be so weird.
Yeah.
No one trusts them anymore.
Yeah, me and Adam have talked about how, look, if the mobbed up union is delivering results, then it makes it more difficult for, the Democratic reformers to be like, hey, we need democracy because the people, they're making good money. They're, and so it's a lot easier to make the case for democracy and reform and stuff like that when the, when the anti-democratic kind of administrations are not delivering. And I think that's kind of, there's sort of a corollary there, I think, with politics too, with the way that people in the base of the Democratic Party are reacting to, the leaders of the Democratic Party. They're like, you're not delivering for us. What's going on? And so they're turning to other avenues. So.
Yeah, that sounds like basically the same, right there, for sure. Thank you.
All right. Yeah. Thanks for the call. 844-899-TVLR is the phone number, 844-899-8857 if anybody else wants to call in. Adam, you had another story that you wanted to talk about, right?
Yeah, I'll pull up my notes real quick. Just a quick story from Disneyland. And I wanted to make sure folks did know about this. AFL-CIO put out an action alert this week to stand with the Disneyland Entertainment cast members. So the character and parade cast members who helped bring the magic of Disneyland to life have been bargaining for their first union contract since October 2024. Y'all, it's August 2026. Almost 2 years. And according to the union, while there has been some progress at the negotiating table, Disneyland management will not come to terms for a deal. In fact, management is now trying to eliminate worker benefits. We grew up with Disney and love their stories and sing their songs. That's a huge part of why the workers want to spend their days and nights working to share that Disney magic. But Disney is also a multi-billion-dollar corporation that needs to take responsibility for how they treat their workers. Disney has carefully crafted their public persona to emphasize that they are truly committed to making the world a better place. They actually have an entire website about their social impact, where they speak about how highly they think of their employees and how much they invest in the employees, both professionally and personally. But how could they possibly claim to hold the employees in such high regard while also stripping away their essential benefits like family leave and taking time off for a loved one to see the doctor or for a kid's school recital? So that's why the cast members of the Disneyland Resort need your help. Behind closed doors, Disney management has dragged out negotiations and disrespected their workers because they think no one is watching. Disney is not afraid to harm their workers to enlarge their profits, which is why they want to eliminate paid parental leave, reduce retirement and PTO benefits, and keep wages insultingly low. So, there is a petition put out by Actors Equity. You can find that on Action Network. You can sign your name and show your solidarity with the cast members of Disneyland. And let the workers know that you support them, and let Disneyland management know that if they truly cared about making the world a better place, they would stop being hypocrites and treat their workers fairly. So I recommend you sign and share that in solidarity with our siblings in Actors Equity down at Disneyland. So please do check that out. Disney is one of these corporations that, as they said, has a very carefully crafted public persona. They rely on good vibes. Well, it's not good vibes to take paid parental leave away from your workers, right? The folks who actually make those kids and families so happy when they visit Disneyland. So wanted to share that action alert with folks. Again, Actors Equity put that out on Action Network. You should be able to Google that Disneyland workers petition, and you should be able to find that, sign that, and share it with your network.
All right. I think that's going to be it for us today, folks. I appreciate everybody tuning in. 844-899-TVLR. If you want to leave us a voicemail, you can send a text to the same number or a written note to tvlr.fm/contact. Oh yeah, we did have, we had one person, 626 area code, said a lot more young people running for positions. We had 30 people run for AFL-CIO delegates, for the NALC convention. Got those in a few minutes ago. So
yeah, that's great. That's great. Love to see people stepping up, run for union office. It's one of the most important things you can do to get involved in your community and in your workplace and to make things better for everyday people. So please do run for office, run for delegate, show up to these conventions, organize around these conventions. I'll never forget my first time at a national convention as a young teacher at the National Education Association's Delegate Assembly, which is the largest of these sort of things, is my understanding. Though hearing these numbers from the letter carriers was really impressive. But yeah, it's a really an amazing experience for democracy. And, you know, you get to learn a lot about your union. You get to learn a lot more about the leaders of the union. You get to make up your own mind about how well they're doing. And you get to have some action on the floor on amendments and voting and putting your voice in the mix. So can't encourage folks enough to do that. And shout out to all the folks coming back from the Letter Carriers Convention. Safe travels. Thanks for all your hard work.
All right. That's going to be it for us this week. See y'all next week.